Chicago 3 years ago. The rain in Chicago was unrelenting, hammering against the fogged glass of the city hall waiting room. But Minjun didn't care. He was looking at Sophia. She wasn't wearing a designer gown, just a simple white sundress she'd bought at a thrift store, her braids pulled back with a ribbon. To Minjun, who had spent his life in the sterile, high-pressure world of Korean chaebols, she looked like oxygen. He married her in secret, not because he was ashamed of her, but because his mother would have destroyed them if she'd found out. "You're shaking," Sophia whispered, her hands finding his. Her skin was warm, a stark contrast to the cold dampness of the room. "I'm terrified," Minjun admitted, a rare vulnerability breaking through his voice. He squeezed her hands. "Not of this, not of us, but of leaving you." "Then don't go." "I have to. The board, my mother. If I don't go back and secure my position, they'll destroy everything. I need the power to protect you." He pulled a simple gold band from his pocket. It wasn't the heirloom diamond his mother expected him to give to a corporate heiress. It was plain, solid, and unbreakable. He slid it onto her finger. 2 months, Sophia. I settle the accounts, I expose the sabotage, and I come back. We'll have a real wedding. I'll shout it from the rooftops of Seoul. She smiled, tears welling in her eyes. "I'll hold you to that, Park Minjun. I swear it." He kissed her then. A desperate, searing kiss that tasted of rain and promise. "You are my home. No matter what happens, my soul knows yours." Present day, Seoul. The boardroom of Park Industries was silent enough to hear a pin drop. 12 executives sat with their heads bowed. At the head of the table, Minjun Park scrolled through a tablet, his expression unreadable. He was different now, cold and brutal. The softness in his eyes from Chicago was gone, replaced by a glacial indifference. A jagged white scar ran through his hairline, usually hidden by his perfectly styled hair, a souvenir from the accident that wiped 3 years of his life clean. "This quarter's projections are optimistic," Director Han stammered. Minjun didn't look up. "They aren't optimistic, they're delusional. You're fired, Han. Get out." "Sir, I said get out." Minjun's voice was low, devoid of anger, which made it terrifying. He rubbed his temple. The headaches were getting worse lately. A phantom pain, a feeling that he was forgetting something vital, something that sat in the center of his chest like a hollow ache. Seoul backstreets. Sophia hurried through the crowded market, clutching a bag of groceries. She looked thinner than she had in Chicago, the light in her eyes dimmed by 3 years of hiding and raising a child alone. She ducked into a small, run-down apartment building. Inside, a toddler, Jun, was playing with a toy car on the floor. He had Minjun's eyes. "Mama!" Sophia scooped him up, burying her face in his neck. "Hey, baby, were you good for Grandma Lee?" A knock at the door made her freeze. She didn't open it for just anyone. "It's me," a voice called out. "Ji-ho?" She opened the door. Ji-ho, Minjun's VP and best friend, stood there looking grim. He was the only link she had left to her husband. "You can't keep doing this, Sophia," Ji-ho said, stepping over a pile of laundry. "You're an archivist with a master's degree, working part-time at a convenience store. Minjun is... he's struggling. The sharks are circling him." "He doesn't remember me, Ji-ho. You said it yourself. The doctor said a shot could cause a hemorrhage." "I did," Ji-ho sighed. "But he needs someone he can trust, even if he doesn't know it's you. I have an opening in executive archives. Just be near him. Please." Sophia's hands were trembling so hard, the china rattled. It was her 3rd day. She was supposed to be invisible, just an archivist, but the executive secretary had the flu, and someone had to bring the refreshments to the board meeting. "Just go in, put the tray down, walk out, don't look at him." She pushed the heavy mahogany doors open. The room was freezing. The air smelled of expensive cologne and fear, and there he was. Minjun sat at the head of the table, bathed in the afternoon light. He looked older, harder, but it was him, her husband, the father of the boy waiting for her at home. Sophia's breath hitched. For a second, the world tilted. She took a step forward, her heel catching on the plush carpet. It happened in slow motion. She lunged to save the tray. She failed. 4 grande iced Americanos and a pitcher of water launched into the air. Splash. Gasps erupted around the room. The dark, icy liquid drenched the front of Minjun's pristine, multi-thousand-dollar Italian suit. Ice cubes skittered across the polished table. "Oh my God," Sophia whispered, horror washing over her. Minjun didn't move. He didn't jump up. He didn't shout. He just sat there, the coffee dripping from his chin. The board members were already shouting, "You idiot! Security! Get her out of here!" "Quiet," Minjun said. One word. The room snapped shut. He slowly stood up. He wiped coffee from his eye and turned to look at the perpetrator. Sophia couldn't breathe. She waited for the execution. She waited for the cold hatred she had heard rumors about. Minjun's dark eyes locked onto hers. And then his pupils dilated. The smell of coffee was overwhelming, but underneath it, he caught a scent. Vanilla and old paper. A scent that hit him like a physical blow to the gut. His heart hammered against his ribs, a violent, confusing rhythm. His hand shot out, grabbing her wrist before she could back away. His grip was iron tight, desperate. The room held its breath. Minjun leaned in, ignoring the mess, ignoring the board, staring into her eyes with a terrifying intensity. He searched her face, looking for an answer to a question he didn't know how to ask. "Have we—" His voice cracked, losing its icy edge. "Have we met before?" Sophia's heart shattered. She wanted to scream, "Yes, I'm your wife. You promised to come back." But she saw the scar on his temple. She remembered Jiho's warning. She forced herself to look down. She pulled her wrist from his grip, hiding her trembling hands behind her back. "No, sir," she lied, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm just the temp." Minjun stared at her for a long, agonizing second. He didn't believe her. His brain said she was a stranger. His soul was screaming that she was a lie. "Get me a towel," he commanded the room, never taking his eyes off her. "And don't fire her." Outside the boardroom, the hallway was quiet, save for the furious clicking of the HR manager's heels. Sophia stood with her back against the cold wall, still trembling. "Unacceptable. Completely unacceptable," the HR manager hissed, thrusting a termination form at her. "Sign this. You'll be blacklisted from every corporation in Seoul. Spilling coffee on CEO Park? Do you have a death wish?" Sophia reached for the pen, her heart heavy. "At least I saw him. At least I know he's alive. I understand. I'll sign." "She won't be signing anything." The voice was low, smooth, and dangerous. The HR manager froze and bowed so low she nearly headbutted the floor. "CEO Park, I was just handling the disposal of the employee." Minjun stood there, jacketless now, the white dress shirt stained brown and clinging to his chest. He ignored the manager entirely, his gaze fixed on Sophia like a laser. "The suit," Minjun said, stepping into her personal space. "It was custom Zegna, $6,000. Sophia swallowed hard. I can't pay that, sir. I have expenses. I don't want your money." Minjun leaned closer. He could smell that scent again. Vanilla. It was making his head spin, a dull ache starting behind his eyes. "You owe me a debt. You will work it off. Work it off? My executive assistant is on leave. You will fill the position. You will be my shadow until the debt is paid. The HR manager gasped. Sir, she is unqualified. She's from the archives basement. Then she learns fast, Minjun snapped. He looked back at Sophia, his eyes dark with something that wasn't quite anger. Be at my office in 10 minutes. Don't be late. Minjun's office was a fortress of glass and steel overlooking the Seoul skyline. It was beautiful, cold, and lonely, just like him. Sophia stood by the door, clutching a notepad. For 3 hours, she had watched him dismantle 3 department heads and a supplier over the phone. He was brilliant, terrifying, and utterly exhausted. She could see the micro-expressions no one else noticed. The slight wince when the light hit his eyes, the way he rubbed his left thumb when he was stressed. He's in pain, she realized. The accident left him with chronic migraines. Stop staring, Minjun said, without looking up from his documents. It's unnerving. I'm sorry, sir. Would you like some tea? Coffee, black. The doctor said caffeine triggers your migraines, sir, she said automatically. Minjun's pen stopped scratching across the paper. He looked up slowly. Who told you that? That is private medical information. Sophia froze. Stupid. I read it in the archives, in the health and safety logs. Minjun narrowed his eyes. You read a lot for a temp. He waved a hand dismissively, but then grimaced, pressing the heels of his hands into his eyes. A groan escaped his lips. The migraine hit him like a freight train. The room tilted. The lights were stabbing needles into his brain. Minjun leaned forward, his breathing ragged. It felt like his skull was splitting open. Sir? Get out, he rasped. Leave me. He didn't want anyone to see him weak, especially not her. But she didn't leave. He heard soft footsteps approaching. The scent of vanilla enveloped him. Sir, please, give me your hand. What? He tried to pull away, but his coordination was shot. Sophia didn't wait for permission. She reached out and took his large hand in hers. Her fingers were cool and firm. Without hesitation, she found the hegu point, the fleshy part between his thumb and index finger. She pressed down firmly, massaging in a slow circular motion. It was an acupressure technique she had learned in the U.S., specifically for him, during the months he suffered from stress headaches while fighting for his inheritance. Minjun gasped. The relief was instantaneous. The sharp spike of pain behind his eyes dulled to a manageable throb. Breathe, Sophia whispered, her voice soft and commanding. Just breathe, Minjun. She slipped. She didn't say CEO Park. Minjun didn't correct her. He couldn't. He was paralyzed by the sensation of her skin on his. It wasn't just physical relief. It was emotional. His body knew her touch. His pulse synced with the rhythm of her thumb against his hand. It felt like coming home. For a moment, the office disappeared. It was just the two of them, suspended in a bubble of intimacy that defied logic. As the pain receded, the reality crashed back in. Minjun opened his eyes. He was holding the hand of a temp employee who had spilled coffee on him 4 hours ago. He was letting her touch him in a way he hadn't let anyone touch him in 3 years. He yanked his hand away as if burned. Sophia stumbled back, realizing what she had done. I'm sorry, I just wanted to help. Minjun stood up, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. The vulnerability vanished, replaced by a frantic, aggressive confusion. He rounded the desk, stalking toward her. Sophia backed up until her hips hit the edge of a filing cabinet. There was nowhere to go. Minjun slammed his hands on the cabinet on either side of her, trapping her. He was close, too close. She could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, the rapid rise and fall of his chest. Who are you? He demanded, his voice rough. I told you I'm. Don't lie to me, Minjun roared, causing her to flinch. He lowered his voice, leaning in until his lips were inches from her ear. You know my medical history. You look at me like you know my ghosts. And that. He grabbed her hand, lifting it up. That technique. Sophia stopped breathing. Minjun stared at her, searching for the truth in her terrified eyes. How did you know to do that? Who sent you? Are you a spy? Or? His voice dropped to a whisper, filled with a desperate, terrifying hope. Or do I know you? The answer to Minjun's desperate question was interrupted by the slamming of the glass doors. Minjun, ah! A woman swept into the room like a blizzard in Chanel. Cherin, beautiful, sharp, and radiating entitlement. She ignored Sophia completely, as if she were furniture. We have a problem, Cherin announced, dropping a tablet on his desk. The global merger file for the European deal. It's gone. Minjun's obsession with Sophia evaporated instantly, replaced by CEO instincts. What do you mean, gone? It's on the secure server. It was, Cherin said, her eyes flicking to Sophia with a predatory glint. Until 10 minutes ago. Someone accessed the mainframe with an unauthorized key and wiped the contract drafts. The Europeans are signing in an hour. If we don't have those files, the deal collapses. Park Industries loses billions. Minjun's face went pale. Who had access? Cherin smirked. That's the interesting part. The access log shows the login came from this office, from the assistant's terminal. She pointed a manicured finger directly at Sophia. Her terminal. The silence was suffocating. Minjun turned to Sophia, the intimacy from moments ago curdling into suspicion. Did you touch the terminal? Minjun asked, his voice low. I was checking my email, sir, but I didn't. She's a temp, Minjun, Cherin interjected. A spy. I told you. She was planted here to sabotage the merger. Minjun looked at Sophia. He wanted to trust the feeling in his gut, but the evidence was right there. Sophia, step away from the desk. Sir, I didn't do this. I can prove it, Sophia said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline pumping through her veins. Security is on their way, Cherin sneered. Don't bother lying. I'm not lying, Sophia said, her chin lifting. She looked Minjun dead in the eye. Trust me. For 5 minutes. If I can't fix it, you can arrest me. Minjun stared at her. Logic screamed no. But that pull, that irrational magnetic pull, screamed yes. Don't touch anything, Cherin shrieked. Let her, Minjun said. Sophia didn't hesitate. She sat at Minjun's main terminal. Her posture changed instantly. Gone was the submissive, terrified temp. In her place was the woman who had managed complex digital archives for museums. She cracked her knuckles and began to type. Her fingers were a blur. What is she doing? Cherin scoffed. She's just mashing keys. Quiet, Minjun ordered, stepping closer. He watched the screen. Sophia opened the command prompt. Lines of code cascaded down the screen. The file isn't deleted, Sophia muttered, but she didn't say it in Korean. She said it in English, then switched seamlessly to rapid-fire, fluent business Korean. They used a mirror masking protocol to hide the directory. Amateur work. Minjun's eyebrows shot up. Mirror masking? It's a redirection script, Sophia explained without looking up, her eyes scanning the code. Someone routed the file path to a dummy folder to make it look deleted. I just need to bypass the proxy. She typed a final command string and hit enter with a decisive thwack. The screen blinked. Access granted. The deleted files reappeared, fully intact. Sophia spun the chair around, breathless. There, the merger files, and... She tapped a few more keys. Here is the IP address of the real sabotage. It didn't come from my terminal. It was routed through my terminal from an external device connected to the guest Wi-Fi. She looked at Cheyrin, specifically a device named CR_mobile_admin. The room went dead silent. Cheyrin's face turned a violent shade of red. She snatched her phone, CR_mobile, and shoved it into her bag. Glitch, Cheyrin stammered. Must be a system glitch. She stormed out, heels clicking furiously. Minjun didn't watch her go. He couldn't take his eyes off Sophia. She sat there, flushed with victory, a strand of hair falling over her face. She looked powerful, brilliant. Minjun walked around the desk. The suspicion was gone, replaced by something much more dangerous. Awe. You, Minjun said, leaning against the edge of the desk, crossing his arms. The way he looked at her made Sophia's breath hitch. It wasn't the look of a boss to an employee. It was the look of a man seeing a woman for the first time. Who the hell are you, Sophia? Archivists don't know how to bypass corporate firewalls. Sophia swallowed. I played a lot of video games growing up. Minjun laughed. A real, genuine laugh that rumbled in his chest. He stepped into her personal space, trapping her in the chair. But this time, it wasn't threatening. He braced his hands on the armrests, bringing his face level with hers. The air between them crackled with electricity. You speak fluent business Korean, he murmured, his eyes dropping to her lips. You know my pressure points. You code like a hacker, and you smell like my lost memories. He tilted his head, his voice dropping to a husky whisper. You are undeniably the most dangerous thing in this building. Sophia's heart hammered against her ribs. Kiss me, she thought. Just remember me and kiss me. Minjun leaned in closer. His nose brushed against hers. Beep! Minjun pulled back as the intercom buzzed. Sir, the European delegation is here. The spell broke. Minjun straightened his tie, the mask of the ice prince sliding back into place, though his eyes remained hot. We aren't done, he told Sophia. Not even close. He left for the meeting. High above, in the security control room, Cheyrin watched the monitor. She saw the way Minjun had looked at Sophia. She saw the near kiss. She picked up her phone. Get me a private investigator, she hissed. I want to know everything about Sophia Williams, where she was born, who she dated, and why she has a 3-year-old son that nobody knows about. The high-stakes urgency of the deal gave way to a suffocating stillness once the Level 3 lockdown was fully implemented. The executive floor was plunged into a deep, unsettling twilight, lit only by the distant neon rivers of Seoul and the low, constant hum of the emergency power grid. Minjun, agitated by the forced confinement and the lingering chaos of the day, was pacing. Sophia watched him, knowing his familiar symptoms of low-grade claustrophobia were starting to flare. She saw the tightening of his jaw, the rapid, shallow breaths. Without a word, she opened the music app on his corporate terminal, the one he never used, and began playing Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. The melody, fluid and melancholic, instantly filled the silent, sealed office. Minjun stopped dead in his tracks. His shoulders visibly dropped. He didn't question the music. He couldn't. It felt like a physical balm. It was the sound of home. He sank onto the long leather couch, the exhaustion of the accident and the memory loss finally winning over his adrenaline. Hours passed, measured by the clock on the wall and the increasing rumble of their stomachs. I'll order something, Minjun announced, snatching his phone. We're stuck here. What do you want? Oh, I'm fine, sir, Sophia replied, trying to avoid any more memory-triggering mistakes. Just a light snack. Minjun ignored her completely, his gaze distant as he navigated the delivery app. He was tapping the screen with an unconscious, efficient speed. He finalized the order and tossed the phone onto the cushion beside him. When the security detail finally delivered the food through the secure airlock, a plastic bag filled with containers, Minjun didn't even look at his own meal first. He grabbed a specific small container and handed it to Sophia. Eat this first. You had a hard day. Sophia opened the container. Her breath hitched. Inside was a piping hot portion of spicy braised short ribs, galbajim, simmered with extra sweet chestnuts, and a separate, insulate cup of warm, cinnamon-infused sujongwa, Korean ginger punch. This wasn't just food. This was the meal they always ordered from their favorite hole-in-the-wall place in Chicago when they were celebrating anything big. He'd even specified the sweet chestnuts, which only she liked, and the ginger punch was what he brewed for her whenever she had a fever. Sophia's hand started to shake. He doesn't remember me, but his body still feeds me. What is it? Minjun asked, tearing off the lid of his own simple kimchi stew. It's galbajim, Sophia whispered, her voice thick. It's just my favorite. Minjun paused, his chopsticks hovering. I know, he said simply. He looked genuinely baffled. I just ordered it. It felt right. It felt necessary. Why does that taste feel older than my memory, Sophia? The food was consumed in a strange, agonizing silence. The intimate familiarity of the meal made the distance between them unbearable. Minjun leaned back, the turbulence in his soul mirrored in his dark eyes. I keep seeing the rain, Minjun confessed, his voice low and ragged, and a hand holding mine. The doctors talk about trauma, about the brain protecting itself. But what if it protected me by erasing the only thing I ever loved? He turned, not looking at her, but at the dark pane of the window, seeing his own tormented reflection. I know I was in love. I feel her absence like a phantom limb, a hole in my chest that screams whenever I am quiet. I feel like I loved her so much, she might as well be dead, because she's gone, and I can't remember her face. I can't remember her name. He rubbed his temples, the phantom pain of memory threatening to crush him. You know the worst part? I don't even know if I left her, or if she left me. I just remember a promise, and the sound of rain. Sophia sat paralyzed. Every word was a knife twisting in the wound, confirming he was mourning her while she was right here, listening. She wanted to scream the truth, to confess everything and end his suffering, but Jiho's warning, the shock could cause a hemorrhage, held her silent. She lowered her head until her chin touched her chest, using the shadow of the couch to conceal her face. She couldn't speak, couldn't risk her voice breaking. She pressed her fingers against her lips, stifling the agonizing sob that clawed its way up her throat. The tears streamed silently down her cheeks, dripping onto the leather of the armchair, soaking into the fabric as she wept for the man who was mourning his own wife. I am here, Minjun. I am the promise. I am the rain. Minjun eventually fell silent, spent by his emotional confession. The Chopin continued its lullaby. He rose and grabbed his heavy, expensive wool coat from the back of his chair. Try to rest, he mumbled, tossing the coat over Sophia's shoulders. The coat smelled overwhelmingly of sandalwood, clean linen, and the uniquely intoxicating scent that was Minjun. Sophia wrapped herself in it, pulling its warmth close, seeking comfort in his residual heat. Minjun lay down on the long leather couch, struggling to settle. Sophia remained seated in the armchair beside him, the silent sentinel of his broken heart. In the deep darkness of the pre-dawn hours, Minjun stirred again. He wasn't awake, but his body was seeking its safe harbor. Guided only by instinct, he shifted, pulling himself closer to the warmth radiating from the adjacent chair. His heavy head settled. The surface was soft, yielding, and impossibly familiar. A place where the tension vanished and the ghosts of memory finally went quiet. He sighed, a deep, shuddering release, and fell instantly into the first deep, true sleep he'd had in months. Sophia froze, every muscle tight with panic and a desperate tenderness. Minjun's head was resting heavily in her lap, the weight of his skull warm against her thigh. His hand, relaxed in sleep, had instinctively grasped the hem of her skirt like an anchor. She didn't dare move. She looked down at his face, peaceful, vulnerable, and heartbreakingly handsome in the dim emergency light. He was home. She raised her hand and, with a shaking, feather-light touch, gently traced the faint, jagged scar along his hairline. Safe. Sophia closed her eyes, the tears falling harder now. Not of sadness, but of a fierce, silent, and unbearable love. The company picnic. A day in the sun. The sprawling lawn of the Park Industries Country Club was transformed into a festival of bright colors and forced corporate cheer. Banners with the company logo fluttered, and employees mingled in casual clothes, a rare sight. Sophia was wearing jeans and a simple linen shirt. She felt terribly exposed. Today was the first time she had brought Jun, 3 years old, to a work event. He was wearing bright blue shorts and running shoes, his dark hair falling over eyes that were uncannily identical to Minjun's. "Don't worry," Jiho said, spotting her near the bouncy house. He looked nervous, clutching a disposable camera. "I put you on the far side near the arts and crafts. No one will notice. Minjun is giving the welcome address now." Sophia nodded, her throat tight. "He looks exactly like him, Jiho. I can't risk Minjun seeing him." "It's been 3 years. Minjun doesn't remember his own mother, let alone what a 3-year-old version of himself looked like." Jiho squeezed her shoulder. "Just keep him busy, and whatever you do, avoid Chaerin. She's been asking too many questions." Minjun stood on the temporary stage, bathed in sunlight. He was giving a dry corporate speech, but his eyes kept sweeping the crowd. He was looking for Sophia. He found her near a brightly colored table, meticulously setting up a small drawing station for June. The way she knelt, shielding the boy from the sun, the gentle brush of her hand on his hair, it twisted something painful and possessive in Minjun's gut. He caught her eye. She quickly looked away, but not before he saw the familiar fear and intensity in her gaze. And now, Minjun forced himself to focus on the speech. "We look forward to a successful and productive fiscal year, fostering our collective." He trailed off. He saw Sophia smile down at Jun. It wasn't the guarded, hesitant smile she gave him in the office. It was pure, unadulterated joy. Minjun's heart hammered. Who is that boy? Why does she look at him like that? Chaerin, standing beside Minjun, smirked as she watched his reaction. "A beautiful sight, Minjuna. A family. If only it were yours." Jun was a 3-year-old whirlwind. While Sophia was distracted talking to a colleague, he spotted a flash of red in the distance. A broken, bright red toy robot lying near a hedge line. He bolted. He didn't notice the CEO leaving the stage, or the crowd dispersing. He only saw the robot. Minjun, needing air and escape from Chaerin, wandered toward the secluded flower garden. He was rubbing the old scar on his temple, lost in thought, when he tripped over something small. "Oof!" Minjun looked down. A little boy with messy black hair and an absolutely furious scowl was sitting on the grass, clutching a broken robot. Jun looked up at the giant man who had just nearly crushed him. The scowl on his face was a perfect tiny replica of Minjun's own expression when he was forced to endure a board meeting. The sight jolted Minjun. He stared at the child. That scowl, the intense dark eyes, the way the boy's lower lip jutted out in stubborn fury. It was Minjun's own face, shrunk down and perfected. Minjun crouched down, suddenly forgetting his migraines, forgetting the company, forgetting everything. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice softer than he'd used in years. Jun didn't cry. He held up the robot. "Broken. I see that. Minjun gently took the toy. The small arm was detached from the torso. He examined it, his CEO hands, usually reserved for signing billion-dollar contracts, turning delicate. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, specialized multi-tool, the kind he always carried. He began working on the robot. Jun sat patiently, watching the intimidating giant man fixing his toy. "My uncle fixes things," Jun whispered. Minjun looked up, his chest tightening inexplicably. "Oh, what does he fix?" "Everything," Jun said confidently. "He fixes my cars and Mama's phone." The word Mama hit Minjun like a physical wave. He pictured Sophia's smile, the one he had just seen. Is she this boy's mother? Minjun carefully snapped the arm back into place, clicking the joint until it locked securely. He handed the toy back. Jun's face lit up, a blinding, joyous grin replacing the scowl. "Thank you, sir." Minjun smiled back, a genuine, unguarded smile that transformed his severe features. The two faces, father and son, were identical in their brief moment of joy. Then, Jun spotted something in the flowers and immediately reverted to his default expression, the little CEO scowl. He turned to Minjun and pointed a finger. "That flower is invading the path. That's bad boundary management." Minjun blinked. "Boundary management?" "Mama says we must manage our boundaries," Jun explained seriously. "The path is for walking, not for flowers. It's disruptive." Minjun burst out laughing, a loud, booming sound that echoed through the garden. Sophia had taught the boy corporate jargon. He was filled with a terrifying, overwhelming wave of emotion. It wasn't simple affection for a child. It was a primal, savage, protective instinct. He felt a desperate urge to scoop this boy up and keep him safe forever. He wanted to know this child. He wanted to know his name. "What is your name, little boss?" Minjun asked, his voice husky. "Jun," the boy replied. "Just Jun." Minjun reached out, unable to stop himself, and gently lifted the 3-year-old into his arms. The boy was light, solid, and warm. Holding Jun was like solving the problem of his memory. It didn't make logical sense, but his body finally felt whole. He buried his nose in the soft, dark hair, inhaling a scent of sunshine and bubble bath. "This feels like mine," Minjun thought, a frantic, overwhelming thought. This feeling, I remember this feeling. A few meters away, hidden behind the high branches of a camellia bush, Chaerin stood perfectly still. She had followed Minjun, determined to isolate him. Instead, she found him holding an unknown child in a protective embrace. His icy mask completely melted away. But it was more than just the embrace. Chaerin zoomed in on her phone camera. The two faces, the world-weary CEO and the innocent toddler, were carbon copies. The cheekbones, the jawline, the intensity of the gaze. They even had the same small, barely visible dimple by their left eye when they smiled. Jun Sophia's son, 3 years old. The pieces slammed together in Chaerin's mind with a terrifying clarity. Minjun's lost years were exactly 3 years ago. The boy was Minjun's. The truth was far worse than corporate espionage. Chaerin smiled, a cold, vicious twist of her lips. Click. She took the photograph, the visual evidence of the shocking resemblance, then slipped her phone into her designer clutch and melted back into the crowd. Sophia, breathless with panic, finally located Jun and Minjun. "Jun! Oh my God!" Sophia rushed forward and gently retrieved the boy from Minjun's arms. She held him tightly, her eyes wide with fear. "I am so sorry, CEO Park." He slipped away. Minjun barely registered her panic. His eyes were still fixed on Jun, this little intruder who had somehow rewired his soul. "He's a very good boy," Minjun murmured, his gaze soft, "and he smells like vanilla." He reached out, his hand instinctively resting on the back of Jun's head for a brief paternal moment. "I don't know why," Minjun confessed, his eyes locking with Sophia's, filled with fresh confusion. "But holding him, I felt safer than I have in 3 years." Sophia could only stare at him, her heart beating a frantic, guilty rhythm against her ribs. Chaerin sat in her personal office, a space as immaculate and cold as a vault. Her phone lay on the desk, the photograph from the picnic. Minjun holding little Jun, their faces strikingly similar, staring back at her. The image was venom. "It's not just a crush, it's a bloodline," she thought, her hands gripping her pen until her knuckles were white. The memory loss was supposed to be my weapon, but she produced a living, breathing heir. She picked up a small, innocuous keychain charm, a polished silver hexagon. It wasn't jewelry, it was a dummy enclosure for Park Industries' most fiercely guarded secret, the prototype for the graphene nanochip, a military-grade memory core that had been developed in the U.S. and was set to launch next quarter. It was a billion-dollar piece of espionage bait. "Too slow, Minjun," Chaerin murmured to the photograph. "You've chosen your little toy over your senses. Now, I'll take away the toy and the company." She made a quick, untraceable call to the head of corporate security, Director Kang, a man whose loyalty lay with the highest bidder, which, for now, was her father. The investor luncheon. The main dining hall of Park Industries was hosting a high-profile luncheon with foreign investors. Minjun was at the head table, the picture of professional confidence, but his eyes kept tracking Sophia. She was moving between tables, ensuring place cards were set and water glasses were filled. He kept remembering the weight of her son, Jun, in his arms, the scent of vanilla, the familiar, comforting feeling of a truth he couldn't name. "Minjun, you seem distracted," Jiho whispered from beside him. "You keep checking on the temperature. It's making the investors nervous." "I am not distracted," Minjun snapped, but his gaze immediately softened when Sophia turned and gave him a quick, nervous smile, the kind she used to soothe his temper. Suddenly, the polished doors of the hall burst open. 4 heavy-set men in corporate security uniforms, led by the stern, silver-haired Director Kang, marched straight across the carpet. They stopped directly in front of Sophia. "Sophia Williams!" Director Kang's voice boomed across the silent room. "You are under arrest for corporate espionage and the theft of classified intellectual property." The entire room dissolved into a horrified, whispering buzz. Glasses clattered. The investors, including Minjun's fiercest rival, leaned forward, eager for the scandal. Sophia froze, pale as death. What?" "We received an anonymous tip," Kang stated, his eyes cold and devoid of pity. "Security footage indicates you may have compromised the integrity of the R&D vault." He nodded to his men. "Search her." 2 guards grabbed Sophia's arms, their grip bruising. They didn't even wait for her compliance. They snatched her work tote bag and roughly upended it onto a nearby service cart. Pens, a small wallet, a water bottle, a laminated photo of Jun, and then the silver hexagon charm rolled across the polished mahogany. Director Kang picked it up with a gloved hand. The graphene nanochip prototype, the intellectual property of Park Industries, estimate market value $1.2 billion. He held it aloft like a trophy. "Checkmate, Miss Williams." Sophia was shaking her head violently. "No, that's not mine. I've never seen that before." Jiho, witnessing the unfolding disaster, jumped up, his face white with terror. He knew this was the end. If Sophia was exposed as a corporate thief, Minjun would be legally obligated to abandon her. More critically, Jiho feared Chaerin would soon uncover Jun. "Director Kang, this is ridiculous," Jiho cried, grabbing his arm. "She's a temp. She wouldn't know what that is. This is a setup. Step away, Vice President, Kang warned, pushing Jiho back. Sophia was being dragged backward, the humiliation of the public accusation crushing her. Tears pricked her eyes. She looked desperately at Minjun, seeking the man who had just days ago defended her coding skills. Minjun hadn't moved. He was sitting perfectly still, his eyes locked on the small photo of Jun that had fallen onto the cart next to the chip. The innocence of the child's face next to the evidence of a billion-dollar crime. He felt the room spinning. His brain was screaming, "Logic! The evidence is indisputable. She is a spy. She lied about the coffee. She lied about everything. She is a criminal." But his heart was beating a different rhythm. Mine, safe, protect. He looked from the chip to Sophia's terrified face, a face that he knew, somehow, was incapable of deceit. He remembered her hands on his head, easing his pain. He remembered her spontaneous laughter at the flower garden with Jun. The thought of her being dragged out, broken and disgraced, triggered a flash of pure, irrational, white-hot rage. Minjun rose slowly from the table. The silence he commanded was immediate and absolute. He walked, not ran, but walked with the heavy, measured pace of a man approaching an execution. He walked past the investors, past Jiho, and stopped directly in front of Director Kang, the security chief. He didn't look at the chip. He looked at Sophia, his eyes dark with an emotion that was part protective rage, part possessive love, and entirely terrifying. He reached out and gently brushed a stray tear from her cheek with his thumb. The intimacy of the gesture in front of 50 powerful people was deafening. "Let her go," Minjun commanded, his voice deadly quiet. Director Kang, emboldened by Chae-Rin's backing, stood his ground. "Sir, with all due respect, this is a matter of national security. The evidence is—" Minjun didn't let him finish. He turned his attention fully to the security chief, and the Ice Prince CEO was back, amplified by a personal, animalistic fury. "I said, let her go." Minjun enunciated each word like a gunshot. "She is my personal assistant. This is my property, and her security is my sole jurisdiction. You have failed to follow protocol, Director Kang." "Sir, I have the chip right here, the proof." Kang held up the evidence. Minjun glanced at the hexagon, then back at Kang's face. "Proof?" Minjun asked, a sneer curling his lip. "You accuse an employee based on an anonymous tip, interrupt a major investor luncheon, and present a piece of evidence that could have been placed in that bag by anyone in this company, including you. You show a pathetic lack of critical thought and judgment." He stepped closer to Kang, forcing the man to crane his neck to look up. "I don't need proof," Minjun stated, the words cutting through the air like razor wire. His eyes never left the security chief's. "I know this woman. I know her competence, and I know her loyalty, and I know she did not do this." He paused, letting the implication hang. "I know her better than I know myself, and my instincts are never wrong. Director Kang, you are terminated, effective immediately. Clean out your desk. Have the company car waiting for you downstairs." Kang's jaw dropped. "Sir, you can't." "I just did," Minjun said simply. He grabbed Sophia's wrist, his touch firm and slightly bruising, anchoring her to him. "And tell your men to stand down, or they can join you on the unemployment line." The security guards immediately released Sophia. The remaining investors were silent, their fascination overcoming their corporate etiquette. Minjun Park, the man rumored to be incapable of human emotion, had just risked a corporate disaster, publicly destroyed his head of security, and done it all for a temp employee he claimed to barely know. Minjun kept his grip on Sophia's wrist. He didn't speak to the crowd. He simply towed her out of the room, pulling her past the stunned faces and the overturned cart. As they walked out, Jiho, who was leaning against a pillar, caught Minjun's eye. Jiho could only mouth the word, "Thank you." Minjun just gave him a cold, hard glare, a clear warning. This is my territory. Stay out. He pulled Sophia all the way back to his private, deserted office. He pushed her inside, then slammed the heavy mahogany door shut. Sophia leaned against the door, trembling violently, the shock finally setting in. She felt sick with relief, humiliation, and confusion. "You shouldn't have done that," Sophia whispered, tears finally falling. "You risked everything for me." Minjun didn't move toward her. He stood in the center of the vast, quiet office, his chest heaving, his tie loosened. He looked like a man who had barely won a brutal, invisible fight. "Don't flatter yourself," he said, his voice raw. "I did it because I hate incompetence, and I hate being played." He walked toward her slowly, until he was close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. He raised his hand, reaching for her face again, but this time his fingers didn't land on her cheek. They traced the line of her jaw, possessively, firmly. But more importantly, Minjun murmured, his eyes searching hers with a desperate primal intensity that stole her breath. "You are mine to protect, not theirs. I don't care about the chip or the rules or the scandal. If they touch you again." He leaned in until his breath was hot on her ear, the vanilla scent from the picnic still clinging faintly to her linen shirt. "If they try to take you away from me, I will burn this company to the ground." He straightened up, his hand dropping away as abruptly as it had appeared. The intimate threat was gone, replaced by the rigid, tormented CEO. "Now," he ordered, walking back to his desk, grabbing his keys. "We're leaving. I need a drink, and you need to tell me why that child looked exactly like my younger brother." Minjun's high-end sedan cut through the Seoul traffic, but the tension inside the car was heavier than the gridlock. Sophia sat rigid in the passenger seat, the seatbelt cutting uncomfortably across her chest. Minjun drove with savage focus, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, his jaw tight. "My younger brother, Jason." Minjun's voice finally sliced through the silence, flat and dangerous. "He died in the accident with me, 3 years ago. The child at the picnic, June, he is a mirror image. Don't lie, Sophia. What did my brother's wife do, or who did she hire, to create a child who looks exactly like the heir to this family?" Sophia flinched, biting back a sob. She couldn't tell him the truth, that June looked like Minjun's younger self, not his dead brother. She couldn't admit he was their son. He looks like many people, sir," she stammered, hating the formal address. "It's just a coincidence." "I don't believe in coincidence when it comes to my family," Minjun growled. He took a sharp turn, forcing a truck to brake hard. "We are going to my penthouse. You are going to tell me everything. Now." The sky, which had been threatening all day, finally broke open. The rain didn't just fall. It detonated against the windshield in a blinding sheet. The rhythmic, frantic thwack of the wipers became the only sound. Minjun visibly stiffened. He squeezed his eyes shut for a terrifying second, forcing them open again. "What is that smell?" he demanded, his voice thin, laced with panic. "The air." Sophia realized the storm had dragged the scent of nearby pine trees and wet asphalt through the air conditioning. A scent that had enveloped them on their wedding day in a small, damp forest chapel in the Pacific Northwest. He's recognizing the scent profile, Sophia thought, terror gripping her stomach. It's too much. The car swerved slightly. Minjun let out a sharp gasp, leaning his head back against the headrest. The rain on the glass dissolved the present, plunging him into the 3 lost years. Flashback. Rain. 3 years ago. He was laughing, a deep, unrestrained sound he hadn't made since the accident. His hair was plastered to his forehead, his suit soaked through. The air smelled exactly like this: pine, earth, and heavy rain. He saw a woman. Her face was indistinct, hidden by the cascade of water from an awning. But her hand, her delicate, small hand, was intertwined with his. He could feel the cold metal of a cheap ring on her finger, identical to the solid gold band on his own. He heard a voice, beautiful and strong, speaking English. I, Minjun, take you, my love, my Sophia, to be my wife. The woman's voice answered, choked with joy. I vow to stay by your side through any storm, even if you forget my name. The world blurred. The woman looked up, and for a split second, he saw her eyes. Sophia's fierce, amber eyes, full of tears and happiness. Her lips were moving, saying a single, critical word. Forever. The memory was like a physical blow. Minjun cried out, a strangled, agonized sound. He slammed his foot on the brake. The car shuddered violently on the wet road, tires screeching inches from the barrier. Minjun didn't move. He was gasping, his body vibrating with pain, both hands clawing at his skull. My head! It's burning! He roared, slamming his head back again. He looked utterly lost, broken, like a trapped animal. Sophia didn't think. The carefully constructed wall of 3 years shattered. The fear of triggering his medical crisis was suddenly secondary to the terror of watching her husband die in front of her. She threw herself across the center console, gripping his neck. Stop it! Look at me! Stop fighting it! She pleaded, her voice cracking with the intimacy she had denied him for so long. She didn't use his title. She used his name, the name of her husband, the name she whispered to her son every night. Minjun! Hold on! Don't let go! Please, Minjun! The sound of his name, spoken with such raw, desperate love, hit him harder than the memory itself. His eyes fluttered, locking onto her. A single, perfect tear tracked a path down his temple. Then, his body went slack. His head rolled to the side, resting against her shoulder. He was unconscious. Hours later. The harsh, fluorescent lights of the VIP wing of the hospital cast a sterile glow. Sophia sat by the bedside, her hand still holding Minjun's, which was cool and pale against the white sheets. Jiho was standing by the window, haggard, having just finished an intense call with Minjun's chief doctor. A stress-induced cerebral incident, Jiho summarized, his voice flat. The brain is rejecting the amnesia. The doctor said if she hadn't gotten him here so fast. He trailed off, rubbing his eyes. You called him Minjun. Sophia wiped a new tear with her free hand. I didn't think. I just saw him. I saw him the way he was in the car crash. It just came out. You need to stop this, Jiho whispered, leaning down. Chae-rin is already circling, demanding updates. The moment she links Minjun to the child, it's over. He could die from the shock, and you could lose June in a custody battle. I can't leave him, Sophia whispered fiercely, gripping Minjun's hand. Not again! A slow, painful groan pulled Sophia's attention back to the bed. Minjun's eyes, glazed and dark, opened. He looked around the room, confused, but then his eyes fixed on Sophia. He didn't recognize her as his aide, or the thief, or the strange woman. He recognized her as a presence. Water, he rasped, his voice rough. Sophia immediately poured a glass, holding the straw to his lips, her movements practiced and tender. What happened? He asked weakly. You had a sudden, severe migraine, sir, Sophia replied, regaining her composure, remembering to use the title. The rain triggered something. Minjun ignored her. He was staring past her, at the bright white wall, his expression intensely focused on something she couldn't see. The rain, he repeated, his eyes burning with an almost frightening clarity. I was in the rain. I was standing with a woman. She was wearing white. She had a bouquet. He looked back at Sophia, his gaze sweeping over her face, searching, recognizing a flicker of the truth, but missing the whole picture. I can see her, he whispered, a dangerous hope flashing in his eyes. I know her shape. I know the sound of her laughter. He blinked slowly. The pain returned, blurring the image. But I can't see her face, Minjun finished, his voice breaking with crushing disappointment. Who is she? Who is the woman I married? And Minjun insisted on being discharged immediately, overriding the doctor's protests. Jiho met Sophia in the lobby, his face etched with worry. The doctor was clear, Jiho hissed, pulling Sophia aside where Minjun couldn't hear. That was a warning seizure. The memories are tearing through the neural scar tissue. If you trigger him again, the cerebral edema could cause irreversible damage, or worse. Sophia's heart hammered against her ribs. She looked at Minjun, pale and leaning heavily on his driver, still radiating that desperate, focused energy of a hunter. He's asking about the woman, Sophia whispered, twisting her hands. The silhouette. He thinks she's a mystery. I can't let him keep looking, but I can't tell him. Then you leave, Jiho stated, his voice tight with finality. Today. You resign, you disappear, you take June and let his brain rest. It's the only way to save him, Sophia. You're becoming a walking risk. Sophia looked at the man she loved, who was destroying his health trying to remember her. She nodded, tears scalding her eyes. I'll tell him I was called away. Urgent family matter. Back in the pristine, silent tower of Park Industries, Sophia stood before Minjun's massive mahogany desk. He was back in his CEO armor, but a fine tremor ran through his hands as he flipped through reports, his focus fractured. She placed the heavy vellum envelope, her resignation, on the corner of his desk. Sir, she said, the formal address scraping her throat. I need to tender my resignation, effective immediately. Minjun didn't look up. Denied. I am serious, CEO Park. I have urgent family matters in the States. I must go. He finally looked up, his dark eyes boring into hers. The pain from the hospital was gone, replaced by a ruthless, burning determination. He picked up the envelope, examining the crisp edge of the paper, then, with a sharp rip, he tore it in half. I need your eyes, Minjun said, his voice flat. The security breach was a targeted attack on you. Whoever planted that chip is still in this building. I need you here to find them. Your competence is necessary. My presence is dangerous, Sophia retorted, abandoning the formality. I am a liability. I caused you to collapse yesterday. I cannot be responsible for your health, Minjun. She used his name again, the sound cracking the carefully maintained composure of the room. Minjun surged to his feet, knocking his chair back with a violent clatter. He strode around the desk, stopping inches from her, trapping her between his body and the cold glass wall overlooking the city. Don't you dare talk about responsibility, he hissed, his breath hot and ragged. I don't care about the chip or the collateral damage or the liability. I care that for 3 years I felt like half a man, missing a piece of my soul I couldn't name. He reached out, cupping her face with a hand that trembled slightly, his thumb brushing her lower lip. Yesterday, in the rain, when I saw that silhouette, my body remembered something my mind won't. I remembered love. I remembered vows. I remembered safety. His voice dropped to a desperate whisper. And every time I look at you, Sophia, that emptiness shrinks. That past is gone, she pleaded, tears blurring her vision. It's too dangerous to try to recover it. It could cost you everything. Minjun leaned in, his lips hovering over hers. His eyes, dark and searching, held hers captive. I don't care about the past, he confessed, his voice a low, gravelly vow. I care that the only time I feel whole, the only time the ringing in my head stops, is when you are standing here within my reach. I don't need proof of who you were, or who I was. He tightened his grip on her jaw, a possessive, aching claim. I want the future with you, and if that is what kills me, then so be it, but you are not leaving. Minjun grabbed his suit jacket and keys. We're done for the night. Jiho will cover. They walked in heavy silence down the empty, soundproofed hallway to the private executive elevator. The door hissed shut, enveloping them in a polished silver box of pure tension. Sophia was still reeling from his confession, that reckless disregard for his own life, that primal need for her. She watched the floor numbers descend, terrified of the powerful, unhinged man standing next to her. Minjun looked at her, truly looked at her. He saw the anguish on her face, the love she was desperately trying to conceal, and the sacrifice she was willing to make for his life. The sight broke the last of his professional control. He moved, not with hesitation, but with the ruthless precision of a man who has decided on the only course of action available. He caged her against the cool, mirrored wall of the elevator, his body pressing into hers, leaving no space for air or doubt. His mouth claimed hers, not gently, but desperately, urgently, as if proving the reality of the memory he had almost touched. It was a kiss of overwhelming hunger and primal possessiveness. He kissed her to silence her protests, to claim her loyalty, and to tell her with his body what his damaged mind couldn't articulate. You are mine. Sophia tried to resist for a millisecond, the danger, the warning, the lie, but the memory of the vows, of the rain, of the man she married, crashed through her defenses. Her hands shot up, gripping the back of his neck, pulling him deeper into the kiss, answering his urgency with a desperate need of her own. The bell chimed as the elevator reached the basement parking garage. The sudden, mundane sound of their destination tore them apart. Minjun stared down at her, his chest heaving, his face dark with shock at the intensity of their connection. Get in the car, he ordered, his voice barely a growl. We are going to my house. You are sleeping in my guest room tonight, and we are going to find out who that woman in white is. The next morning, Minjun sat in the back of his chauffeured car, scrolling through high-resolution images of diamond rings from the most exclusive Seoul jewelers. Sophia was beside him, staring out at the early morning traffic, her silence heavy and thick, her lips still sensitive from the previous night's desperate kiss. He finally tapped an image and handed her the tablet without a word. The ring was a simple platinum band, centered with a single cushion-cut diamond that caught the light like frozen water. It was classic, understated, and terrifyingly familiar. I've selected this for myself, Minjun announced, watching her reaction with an unnerving intensity. A small investment, nothing flashy. What are your thoughts? Sophia's breath hitched. Their original wedding band, the one they bought together at a cheap antique shop, was a simple silver band. The cushion-cut diamond he had selected was almost the shape and size of the solitaire Minjun had promised to buy her when they returned to Korea before the accident. It was the future ring he forgot to buy, now chosen by a man who didn't remember the promise. It's beautiful, sir, Sophia managed, handing the tablet back, her voice shaking slightly. It suits your minimalist aesthetic. It does not suit my aesthetic, Minjun corrected, his voice low and intimate, ignoring the presence of the driver. It suits the feeling I had when I saw the silhouette in the rain. Simple, eternal. I feel like I've been searching for it for years. He leaned closer. I'm going to use it to propose to the woman who fills the void, the woman who doesn't lie, even when she's trying to, the woman who calls me Minjun when she thinks I'm dying, he murmured to himself. They arrived at the office. Minjun called Sophia into his private conference room, the one with panoramic views that always made her feel dizzy with anxiety. He didn't discuss reports or sabotage. He handed her a blank presentation deck. I will be proposing to my fiancé next week, and I require an event planner who is sensitive, discreet, and capable of executing a perfect romantic moment. He gestured to the empty deck. This is your sole project for the week. You are designing the perfect, luxurious, unforgettable proposal. Assume an unlimited budget. But it must be personal. It must feel like a vow. Minjun sat back, steepling his fingers, watching her intently. My fiancée, she loves history. She prefers quiet moments over crowds. She loves the feeling of being protected from the storm. Sophia stared at the deck. Minjun was reciting her own personal history back to her. The private wedding in the rain, her love of archival history, his protective rage. He was unknowingly describing her. What about location, sir? Sophia asked, trying to keep her voice professional over the pounding of her heart. Find a place that feels like a refuge, Minjun instructed, his voice dropping to a seductive murmur. Somewhere high above the city, where she can see the world, but the world can't see her. Think, glass, water, minimalist beauty. You have 24 hours to produce a draft plan. Sophia retreated to her small corner office, the presentation deck glowing mockingly on her screen. The task was agonizing. It wasn't planning an event. It was planning the proposal she thought she would get, guided by the very man who had forgotten it. The location. She chose the Sky Garden Pavilion atop the Park Industries Tower. It was an unused space, a modernist, glass-encased greenhouse with a retractable roof, currently filled with sparse, native Korean rock gardens and a small, shallow reflection pool. It overlooked the whole city, but the thick glass kept the noise out. A refuge. The setting. She specified the pool should be entirely covered by a temporary white floor, making the surface look like a cloud. The only decor? 50 perfect white roses and soft yellow lighting. The food. She detailed a dinner menu that included the simple, rustic Italian pasta they had shared on their first date in America, followed by Minjun's favorite bitter chocolate cake. She typed quickly, ignoring the tears that dripped onto her keyboard. This was her last act of love, to design his perfect moment of happiness, even if she had to stand on the side, watching him promise forever to a woman he still couldn't recall. The next evening, Minjun had Sophia present the plan to him in his office. He didn't interrupt, his expression unreadable, simply leaning back and absorbing every detail. Sophia projected the image of the proposed Sky Garden Pavilion, the white floor covering the pool, the minimal white roses, the soft amber glow. The theme is simple eternity, Sophia explained, clicking to the next slide. The white floor represents the blank canvas of a new future, while the lighting should be dim, reminiscent of candlelight, or a warm inner glow. Minjun nodded slowly, his eyes shining with an uncanny recognition. Why the white roses? Not orchids? The classic cheeble flower? No, Sophia insisted, tapping the screen. White roses are ancient. They represent the purity of a vow, secrecy, and true love. And they are robust. They survive the rain they withstand environmental stress. She clicked to the final slide, the customized music list. It wasn't classical. It was a short playlist of obscure indie Korean ballads Minjun had played when they drove through the U.S., songs he couldn't possibly know now. Minjun stared at the screen, a profound sense of rightness washing over his face. He felt the phantom taste of the rain again, the echo of the vows, the inexplicable comfort. Sophia, he breathed, leaning across the desk, his professional mask entirely gone. Every single detail. It's perfect. How did you know? Sophia lowered her gaze, unable to meet the intensity of his eyes. I have a strong imagination, sir. I channeled what I think a soulmate would want. Minjun smiled, a slow, dangerous curve of his lips that was both devastatingly handsome and utterly terrifying. He reached across the desk, picking up the small, gold-plated replica of the sky garden they used for scale. "Good," he said, turning the replica over in his hands, "because I will be proposing at the gala in 2 days, and you, Sophia, will be there to ensure every single detail of this simple eternity is executed flawlessly." He didn't mention the real woman who would receive the ring. He simply stated that she would be there. The perfect trap was set, designed by the victim herself. The grand gala was a whirlwind of silk, diamonds, and corporate ambition, but Minjun was immune to the noise. He walked with Sophia by his side, the connection between them a charged wire visible only to them. Sophia was breathtaking in a simple, charcoal gray gown, designed to look professional yet elegant, as her official role was still executive aide coordinating the VIP event. Jiho intercepted them by the main elevator bank, his face pale with anxiety. "Minjun, are you sure about this? Proposing here tonight? Your mother is furious you didn't consult the family." "My mother is not the one I will be marrying," Minjun stated coldly, adjusting his cufflink. His eyes swept over Sophia, a silent reassurance. "The woman I am marrying deserves the grandeur in the public declaration. Jiho, stall the directors for 20 minutes. Sophia and I are going to finalize the Sky Garden arrangements." Sophia's heart was hammering. The moment had arrived. Jiho was panicking because he knew Minjun's plan was to propose to Sophia. She had to watch the perfect world she designed collapse in the next half hour. They stepped into the private express elevator to the Sky Garden Pavilion. "It looks exactly like the design," Minjun murmured, "but the true art, Sophia, is you." The Sky Garden Pavilion was breathtaking. The retractable roof was open, revealing the cold, dark Seoul sky sparkling with a few brave stars. The temporary white floor, illuminated by amber spotlights, made the room feel like a cloud floating high above the city. 50 white roses glowed on a simple pedestal. "It is, indeed, the perfect refuge," Minjun said, his voice thick with emotion. The dozen or so guests, a mixture of company shareholders and Minjun's closest, least critical associates, were already gathered. Minjun took a glass of champagne, pulling Sophia with him to the center of the white floor. He tapped the glass with the ring box he now held in his other hand, a velvet box that held the cushion-cut diamond. "Ladies and gentlemen," Minjun announced, his voice carrying the deep authority of the CEO, but softened by an undeniable personal joy. "For the last 3 years, I've been living a ghost life. I woke up with my history erased, and I dedicated myself to my family's legacy. But legacy is meaningless without a future." He turned to Sophia, and the look in his eyes was pure, unadulterated devotion. He reached for her hand, the hand that had rested in his lap in the storm. "Tonight, I found my missing future," he continued, gazing at Sophia, "the most competent, beautiful, and loyal woman I have ever known. A woman whose presence stops the constant ringing in my head. A woman I feel I have loved for 1,000 lifetimes, even though my mind betrayed me. Sophia Williams." "Stop." The single word, sharp and venomous, cut through the romantic air like a gunshot. Chai Rin, Minjun's ex-fiancée, stood in the doorway, framed by 2 of her own private security guards. She was wearing a stunning, fiery red dress that made her look like the literal embodiment of vengeance. Minjun scowled, his focus snapping instantly from lover to CEO. "Chae-rin, this is a private event. You are interrupting me." "I am saving you, Minjun," Chae-rin spat, marching onto the white floor, her heels echoing the dread in the room. She walked straight to Minjun, her eyes locked on the velvet box in his hand. "Don't you dare give that to her." She snapped her fingers. One of her guards, standing by the main projector, hit a button. A massive, blinding white projection on the glass wall behind the roses instantly obliterated the elegant, subtle lighting of the sky garden. It was a series of high-resolution photographs, so sharp, so brutally clear, that the entire room seemed to inhale at once. Chaos erupted. Gasps rippled through the few guests. Jiho rushed forward, shouting, "No! Stop the projector!" Chaerin blocked him with a smile of pure malice. "You thought you could keep this buried, Sophia? In front of him? In front of everyone?" Minjun stood frozen, his eyes locked on the images. His jaw tightened, the muscles in his face going rigid. His mind strained, reaching for the memory. But the pain came back, a stabbing agony that made him wobble on his feet. Chaerin wasn't finished. She pressed the button again. The projection shifted. 3 more photographs, side by side. Sophia in a simple dress, standing outside a U.S. courthouse, clutching a small bouquet. Sophia in a park, smiling down at a newborn baby, June. And then Sophia being kissed by a man, his back to the camera, his face obscured by shadow, and the angle of his head, but his frame and expensive suit unmistakably belonged to a man of status. The room erupted harder this time, whispers turning into audible disbelief, the kind that slices through fancy music and polished smiles. Chaerin pointed dramatically at the photos, twisting the knife. "Minjun, she is not your loyal aide. She is a criminal, a liar, and a manipulator. She is married and she has a child. The same child she brought to your company picnic to solidify her claim. She is playing you. She has a husband, Minjun. Right here. See the photograph. The man she swore a vow to." Minjun dropped the velvet ring box. It hit the white floor with a soft thud that sounded louder than thunder. The cushion-cut diamond rolled slowly, catching the light, an ironic symbol of the simple eternity he had sought. He didn't look at the baby. He didn't even look at the other evidence. His eyes were locked, paralyzed, on the photograph of the man kissing Sophia, the husband. The possessive fury he felt for this phantom man was worse than the pain of his memory. He turned slowly, his face drained of color, his eyes twin voids of crushing betrayal. He looked at Sophia, who was standing beside him, tears streaming silently down her face, the perfect charcoal gown suddenly looking like a shroud. She offered no defense. Her silence was her admission. "The lie," Minjun whispered, his voice dangerously soft, breaking like glass. "I can forgive the lie, the risk, the manipulation, but—" He gestured weakly toward the photo of the other man, the man he desperately wanted to be. He took one agonizing step toward her, his face contorted in a mask of total devastation. His hand rose, but instead of touching her, he gripped the air between them, shaking. "You lied to me?" Minjun demanded, the question ripping from his throat. "You have a husband." The air in the penthouse office of MJ International was thick and cold, heavier than the black marble of Minjun's desk. It had been 72 hours since he saw the photographs, and the silence had been her executioner. Sophia stood rigid by the window, ostensibly filing reports she couldn't see through the sheen of dread coating her vision. Minjun sat behind his desk, not working, just watching. The man who had once burned with protective warmth now radiated pure, glacial indifference. He finally spoke, his voice calibrated to cut like ice against glass. "You're still here, Miss Williams. Surprised?" She forced the word out. "I was waiting for the termination notice, Mr. Park." He laughed, a short, ugly sound devoid of humor. "Termination? And let you go? No, no. That would be a mercy. And mercy is for the innocent, Sophia. You owe me more than just unemployment." Minjun's voice was dangerously smooth. "Starting today," he said, "you will be my dedicated personal assistant. 24 hours a day. You will handle my schedule, my meetings, and all my personal needs. You will be within 5 meters of me at all times when I am not asleep or showering. His eyes, dark and relentless, pinned her to the spot. You see, Sophia, I need to know why. Why me? Why the lies? And since you're incapable of telling me the truth, I'll just watch you until you break. Your proximity will be your torment, and my patience will be your cage. She felt the walls closing in. This wasn't professional. It was personal, vindictive, and intensely immersive. Mr. Park, please, she pleaded, her voice cracking. I can leave. I'll never show up in your face again. Stop talking about leaving, he snapped, the first genuine heat since the discovery flaring in his eyes. I need to see the architect of your betrayal. I need to know whose hands touched what I thought was mine. I want to meet your husband, Sophia. Today. Bring him here. The demand was a physical blow. Sophia stumbled back a step, gripping the fabric of her skirt until her knuckles were white. The pain in his voice was the same pain that had lived in her chest for years. That's impossible. Don't lie to me again, he warned, leaning forward until his shadow stretched across the polished mahogany. No more excuses. Call him. Text him. Tell him his wife's powerful, dangerous lover wants to talk about terms. She swallowed hard, her secret a heavy stone in her throat. You don't understand, she whispered, tears finally blurring the razor-sharp lines of her face. Minjun, please. You have to let this go. He slammed his hand down on the desk, the sound echoing like a gunshot. I don't let anything go. I own everything I touch. I own the space you breathe. Bring him here, or I swear I will fire every single person in this company until I find out his name. The threat was terrifyingly real. For the first time, she saw a path to end this, but it meant tearing open a wound she had stitched closed years ago. She took a shaky breath, meeting his glare with a desperate, fragile honesty. He's gone. He doesn't remember me. Minjun froze. His posture, rigid with aggression, dissolved into stunned confusion. Gone? His voice was suddenly softer, deadly quiet. What the hell does that mean, Sophia? Did he leave you? Did he die? The brutal coldness in her answer was for herself as much as for him. It means he's not a factor. He's gone. To him, I ceased to exist years ago. A slow, terrifying realization dawned on Minjun's face, not of relief, but of poisonous jealousy. He processed her words and twisted them through the lens of his own pride. He died. He abandoned her. He broke her. But she still wears his ring. Minjun stood, rounding the desk, his presence overwhelming. He looked down at her, not seeing a woman trapped by circumstances, but a woman still mourning a lost love, the ghost husband. You wear that medal for a ghost? He ground out, grabbing her chin, forcing her to look up. A memory? You saved yourself for a man who abandoned you? You could have the man who can give you the world, but you weep for a shadow? His thumb brushed the silver band on her finger, a devastating, possessive gesture. The touch was burning, demanding. I won't compete with the ghost, Sophia. I will obliterate him. I will make you forget what his name even sounded like. If he left you broken, I will break you further. Then I will rebuild you. I will possess every single synapse that holds his memory. He didn't release her chin. He lowered his head, his face inches from hers. The icy CEO was gone, replaced by the primitive, wounded man. You want to stay near him? Fine. Stay near me. Feel this. This is real. This is living. And this is forever mine. Minjun's eyes dropped to her lips, and the air crackled with a storm she knew neither of them could survive. Minjun's office, 3 a.m. The penthouse office of MJ International was submerged in darkness, save for the sickly blue light emanating from Minjun's massive monitor. He was alone, having dismissed his driver and his reluctant, silent shadow, Sophia, hours ago. But Sophia was still present. She was the subject of the single, massive, pixelated image filling his screen. The blurred photograph of her kissing the husband outside the courthouse. Minjun sat slumped, a tumbler of aged scotch untouched on the desk. He hadn't worked, hadn't slept, hadn't moved. He was drowning in the image, searching for a flaw, a detail that proved Sophia wasn't still attached to this phantom man. He hated the man. He hated the way the man's arm wrapped around Sophia's waist. He hated the way her head tilted, a familiar, trusting angle that she gave only to Minjun now. The jealousy was a corrosive acid, burning away his reason. He clicked the monitor, zooming in until the image of the man's dark, tailored suit filled the frame. The suit was expensive, custom-made. A chaebol, or a rival, Minjun seethed. He leaned forward, his elbows digging into the desk. He traced the man's obscured profile with a trembling finger, his breath fogging the screen. "Who are you?" he whispered, his voice hoarse from hours of silence. "What makes you worthy of her?" Minjun noticed a tiny flicker of light in the sea of dark fabric, a metallic reflection near the man's left wrist. It was too small to identify, just a brilliant oblong spark in the shadows. He used the digital magnifier on his monitor, pushing the resolution far past its limits, distorting the image into blocks of color. The spark resolved into a faint, silver detail, a cufflink. Minjun's eyes narrowed. It wasn't just any cufflink. It was a distinctive design, a stylized silver dragon, detailed in black onyx, unique to his family's history. It was a traditional gift given to every Park male on his 30th birthday, a piece of custom jewelry no rival would dare wear. Minjun leaned closer, his heart thundering against his ribs, discarding his earlier theories. This isn't just a rival. This is someone close, someone family. He thought of Jiho, his best friend, the only person who might know the truth about the marriage. But Jiho would never wear Minjun's birth year cufflink. He thought of his cousins, his uncles. But why would any of them be kissing Sophia outside a U.S. courthouse? The image defied logic, yet the evidence was irrefutable. Minjun slowly, deliberately, reached for his own wrist. He had pushed up the sleeve of his white dress shirt when he got to work. He tugged his cuff down, exposing his left wrist. There was nothing there, just smooth skin. Minjun frowned, confused. He looked back at the screen, at the ghost man's cufflink. He knew that piece. He had worn it. But when? He never wore cufflinks now. His mother insisted he wear the family watch, a heavy gold timepiece. Suddenly, a painful, sharp flash of memory, a splinter of truth, cut through the amnesia. Flashback fragment. 4 years ago. Minjun is running through the office, late for a flight. He catches his cufflink on a door handle. It rips off, tearing a gash on his wrist. He rubbed his own left wrist. The skin was smooth, but if he pressed hard enough, he could feel a very faint line, a barely visible, faint white scar just below the bone, an injury from years ago. He looked back at the zoomed image of the husband's wrist. He strained to see through the pixels. There, barely visible between the white cuff and the dark suit jacket, was a tiny, faint, white line. Minjun's breath hitched. The same scar, the same injury. But it wasn't the cufflink that hit him. It was what happened after he caught his cufflink. He remembers Sophia, the clumsy aide, rushing to his office after the injury. She had disinfected the cut, wrapped it neatly, and then she had scolded him fiercely, in English, for being reckless. She had called him a childish name, She had called him Minjun Ah. The memory of her hands, her scent, or her fierce love, it all rushed in, too fast, too violently. She was his assistant back then, until the lines blurred and they fell in love, but his mother was fiercely against the relationship. So Minjun did the one thing no one expected. He took Sophia to the US, far from the pressure and control, and married her there, quietly, deliberately, as if love was the only decision he wanted to make for himself. The blood drained from Minjun's face. The room tilted violently, the onset of another seizure, but this time it was a cerebral tidal wave, not a fracture. The amnesia shield shattered. The fragmented memories became whole, burning in his brain. The small, damp chapel in the U.S., the preacher's voice echoing the vows, the taste of rain and cheap champagne. Sophia, laughing and crying, her face perfectly clear, wearing the same simple dress from the photo. His own voice, thick with love, promising to cherish her forever. The moment he signed the marriage certificate, the scent of pine and wet earth, the scent of their wedding day, not just the rain, the entire missing 3 years, the quiet, intense, blissful life he'd built with Sophia, crashed into him. He wasn't a powerful, jealous CEO competing for his aid. He wasn't fighting a ghost husband. He was the husband. The man in the blurred picture was him. The man who abandoned his wife and son was him. The man he hated. The ruthless, oblivious bastard who had fallen in love with his wife twice was him. The agony of the truth was physical. He had broken her heart, risked her life, humiliated her in public, and then tortured her for kissing the man in the picture and loving himself. Minjun's chest seized. He shot out of his chair, sending it crashing to the floor, his body arching in an animalistic cry of realization and self-hatred. He backed away from the desk, stumbling over the chair, his hands flying to his head, his elegant suit now soaked in cold sweat. He stared at the blurred figure on the screen, seeing his own suit, his own scar, his own wedding ring. His voice tore from his throat, a raw, guttural sound of utter, self-annihilating despair. It was me! God! It was all me! I'm the husband! He collapsed to his knees amidst the shattered silence of the dark office, clutching his head, finally remembering the name of the woman he swore to protect. The shattered silence of Minjun's office was broken by his ragged breathing. He was still on the floor, the memory crash having left him weak, but the pain had been replaced by a fierce, driving clarity. He was no longer the Ice Prince. He was a man utterly consumed by guilt and terror. He scrambled to his feet, grabbing the chair he'd knocked over. The projected image of the blurred husband was still on the screen. He strode forward, slamming his palm against the screen to hide the image of his own back. Fool! You selfish, cruel bastard, he spat at his reflection in the dark glass of the office wall. He remembered every cold word from the Cold War episode, every demand for the phantom husband, every tear he forced Sophia to shed. He stumbled to the intercom, his hands shaking violently as he pressed the emergency direct line button to Jiho. Jiho, wake up now. Get to the company server immediately. I need a search warrant. The voice that answered was groggy and fearful. Minjun? What happened? Another episode? I'll call the doctor. No doctor, Minjun cut him off, his voice raw with urgency. The amnesia is gone. I remember everything. The wedding. Sophia. Jun is my son. A beat of stunned silence crackled over the line. My God, Jiho breathed. It worked. You remember? I remember torturing my wife, Minjun snarled, already halfway out the door. She will have left. She must have packed. I need her address, Jiho. Now. Use the company archives. The employee file. Anything. If she leaves this city, I swear I'll never forgive myself. Find her. I'm heading to her apartment. Sophia's apartment. 4:45 a.m. Minjun drove his own car, reckless and fast, ignoring all traffic laws. He didn't use the secure corporate apartment. Sophia, the archivist who preferred authenticity, had a small, anonymous place in a quiet, older residential district, a fact Jiho had quietly provided. He burst through the door, having kicked the cheap lock in a desperate frenzy. The apartment was silent, dark, and horrifyingly empty. The small space felt cold and cavernous. The furniture was still there, but everything personal was gone. The framed photos, the small art supplies, the brightly colored children's toys. Sophia had executed a clean, swift exit, just as Minjun would have done in a hostile takeover. He walked into the small kitchen. A half-full jar of Jun's favorite cereal sat on the counter, but the bowls were gone. He opened the refrigerator. Only a bottle of water and a note, secured by a magnet, remained. Minjun ripped the note off the fridge. It was a single line, written in Sophia's elegant, precise script. I couldn't stay where I was hated. He crushed the note in his fist, the paper tearing against his palm, the words stabbing him with surgical precision. She thought I hated her. She thought I was just tormenting her. The image of her tear-streaked face at the gala flashed, followed by her heartbroken confession in the office. He's gone. He doesn't remember me. He realized she wasn't talking about a ghost husband. She was talking about him. In the small living room, Minjun noticed one item she had forgotten in her haste. A small, laminated photograph tucked under the edge of a throw pillow. He picked it up. It was a close-up photo of Jun, asleep, his cheek resting on a plush blue dinosaur. The boy's tiny hands were curled into fists, and the light catching his eyelashes made him look impossibly delicate. Minjun had never seen the boy this close, and the sight was a revelation. Jun wasn't just like him or his brother. The stubborn set of the jaw, the long, dark lashes, the tiny, faint dimple on the left cheek. It was a mirror image of Minjun at age 3. The protective instinct he'd felt at the company picnic, the fierce, irrational urge to claim this boy, was fully justified. He brought the photo to his lips, kissing the image of his sleeping son. His family was real. His past was real. And he had lost them both. 5 a.m. Minjun was back in the car, his voice now calm and focused. The CEO fully merged with the desperate husband. He had shifted from panic to execution. He called Jiho, who had tracked the location of Sophia's company phone, a requirement for all executive aides. Where is she, Jiho? Her phone is off the grid now, Minjun. She must have known we would track it and dumped it. Jiho's voice was strained. But I found a record. 3 days ago, she purchased 2 one-way tickets on the 6 a.m. Mugunghwa train from Seoul Station. Destination, Busan. She must be planning to take a ferry or a flight from there. Busan, Minjun repeated, slamming his foot on the accelerator. 4 hours by train, 2 hours by car if I drive like a maniac. I have 120 minutes. Wait, Minjun, you can't drive that fast. Call the police. Call my security team. No police. No security, Minjun growled, weaving through the minimal highway traffic. The moment I bring the law in, she'll be forced to use the documents, and I risk an investigation into the memory loss and the inheritance. I will not have my son used as a corporate pawn. This is private. This is family. I will not lose my wife to the law I created. He called the company's CFO directly. I need a financial trace on every Park Industries black card and private flight manifest leaving Busan today. Cross-reference it with any large purchase or reservation made by the name Sophia Williams in the last 48 hours. I want every asset in motion. This is an all-hands-on-deck crisis. Minjun threw his expensive cell phone onto the passenger seat. He didn't need a map. He only needed speed and the raw, desperate memory of her face. Seoul Station, 5:45 a.m. The vast, echoing terminal of Seoul Station was beginning to stir, filled with the early morning rush of commuters and travelers. Sophia stood by track 7, the destination board glowing above her head. Mugunghwa Line to Busan, departing 6 a.m. She was wearing a simple jacket and holding a small duffel bag. Her 3-year-old son, Jun, was asleep, strapped into a carrier on her back, his small head resting heavily against her shoulder. She looked utterly exhausted, pale and broken. She had cried herself dry hours ago, but now a desolate resolve had settled over her. She was leaving Seoul, leaving the park legacy, leaving the man she loved to save his life and his company from her chaotic presence. She checked her small, worn watch, the only expensive piece of jewelry she still owned, a gift from Minjun. 5:47 a.m., 13 minutes until she boarded. A final, clean break. She leaned against a cool marble pillar, closing her eyes, allowing herself a final, agonizing minute to mourn the man she married, the man who had come back to her, and the man who, ultimately, hated her the most. She felt a flicker of pain, a muscle memory of Minjun's hand gripping her chin in the Cold War office. "You have a husband?" she remembered him demanding. The word still tore at her heart. A sudden, fierce commotion erupted from the main entrance. A man, impeccably dressed but utterly disheveled, running past the security checkpoint and through the main hall like a force of nature. His hair was messy, his tie was loose, and his eyes, wild, dark, and utterly desperate, were searching, scanning every face. He stopped dead center in the massive hall, chest heaving, his powerful presence drawing the eyes of every person nearby. He looked like the world's most powerful man, utterly undone. Sophia instinctively turned away, pulling June tighter against her back, trying to disappear into the crowd. Not now. Don't see me now. But Minjun's eyes, the eyes that had spent 3 years unconsciously searching for her face, found her instantly. He saw the charcoal jacket, the rigid posture, the sleeping child on her back. He shouted her name, the sound of his voice tearing through the cavernous station, the desperation and the relief making it sound like a primal roar. "Sophia!" The sound froze her, pinning her to the pillar. She didn't dare turn around, but she could feel his presence, massive and demanding, closing the distance. Minjun ran toward her, his pace slowing only when he reached her, not because of exhaustion, but because of the reverence and the terror that he was seeing them, his entire world. For the last time, he stopped, inches behind her, unable to touch, unable to speak. "Don't touch me, Minjun," she whispered, her voice a thin thread of pain. "Please, just let me go." He ignored the request. He reached out and gently, reverently, unstrapped the sleeping carrier from her back. He took the weight of their son onto his own chest, holding June against his heart for the first time as a fully remembering father. Minjun lowered his head, his forehead resting against the back of Sophia's neck, his voice thick with a confession that had been 3 years too late. "I remember the vows, Sophia. I remember the rain. I remember the lie you had to live. I remember that I was the one who left you broken." He wrapped his free arm, the one not holding their son, around her waist, pulling her back against the combined warmth of himself and Jun. "I remember who I am, wife," he choked out, his voice wet with tears. "And I won't lose you again. Ever." Track 7. Seoul Station, 5:50 a.m. The 6 o'clock train to Busan began its low, metallic announcement, the sound filling the space around Minjun, Sophia, and their sleeping son. Sophia remained rigid in Minjun's grasp, the combined weight of him and Jun a suffocating, painful warmth. She didn't turn around. She didn't move. "Don't you dare," she finally said, her voice shaking with controlled fury. "Don't you dare use him as leverage. You lost the right to use our memories the moment you used your power to break me." He regretted it now, deeply. He'd been so obsessed with making her his, so desperate to claim what his heart already recognized, that jealousy had infected everything. He'd gotten jealous of a husband who didn't even exist, a husband who was actually him. God, he hated himself for it, for making her life harder, for putting her through pain she never deserved. Minjun pulled his head back, forcing his composure. He kept Jun secure on his chest, adjusting the carrier straps with practiced ease, a muscle memory she recognized from their life together. "I know what I did, Sophia, how I tormented you because of the pictures," he said, his voice low and agonizingly sincere. "I was cruel. I was oblivious. I was everything I swore I would never be. But the man who did those things is gone. The man standing here. He's your husband. He's Jun's father." She finally twisted free of his arm, stepping away, her eyes blazing with exhaustion and betrayal. "The husband doesn't exist anymore, Minjun. He died 3 years ago when you crashed your car. The man who replaced him tormented me because of a wedding picture. You made me hate you, and I can't live in the orbit of that hatred." He took a slow step toward her, holding his son tightly. "You don't hate me. You hate the amnesia. You hate the trauma that stole 3 years of my life. If you hated me, you wouldn't have stayed here for months trying to protect me from the inheritance fight." "I stayed for Jun," she lashed out. Her confession hung in the air, proof that her sacrifice had been far greater than his suffering. The sound of the train boarding announcement, coupled with the rising heat of the argument, finally stirred Jun. His eyes fluttered open, wide and dark, settling on Minjun's face. A slow smile, completely guileless, spread across the boy's features. "Minjun Appa," he mumbled, reaching out a tiny hand to touch his cheek. The endearment, "Dad," hit Minjun with the force of a physical blow. He froze, tears welling in his eyes as he leaned his head down, pressing his face against his son's. "Yes, Jun," Minjun whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm here. I'm so sorry, my son. I'm here." Sophia watched the exchange, her resolve crumbling at the edges. Minjun was no longer the CEO. He was just a man holding his son, a man who Jun loved and trusted instinctively. "You have 5 minutes," she said, her voice drained of fight. "Tell me why I shouldn't walk onto that train and disappear forever." Minjun looked from his son to his wife, his entire world hanging in the balance. He spoke not with corporate promises, but with terrifying vulnerability. "I need you to tell me how to fight, Sophia. I don't know how to live without you. These last 3 years, they were nothing but a dark, powerful vacuum. The only time I felt alive was when I was near you, even when I didn't know why. I fell in love with you twice. I loved you as the cold, powerful CEO, and I loved you as the quiet man who ran away to be with you." He kissed Jun's forehead, then met her eyes again. "I have everything, money, power, influence, but without you and him, I am nothing. I am just a man who signed papers and attends meetings. Jun deserves a father who is whole, and I deserve the chance to be that man for him." He gently took Jun's hand and placed it over her wedding ring finger. "Don't leave us. Don't make him lose his father, and don't make me lose my wife twice in one lifetime." The final call for the Busan train echoed through the station. Sophia looked at Minjun, then at the innocent, trusting face of her son, and she knew she couldn't tear them apart, but she wouldn't return to be his victim. "Fine," she said, the word heavy with consequence. "We will stay. but only on my terms. Minjun? Minjun nodded instantly, his eyes burning with acceptance. Anything. Name them. She straightened, regaining the cool composure that defined her success as his archivist. Term 1. You will immediately transfer a significant, non-negotiable portion of your non-voting shares to an untraceable trust fund in Jun's name. This ensures that no family member can ever use him as leverage against you. His future is secured, legally and completely separate from Park Industries' political whims. Term 2. The lie ends now. You will personally address the board and your family, revealing the marriage and Jun's true identity. The press will know within 24 hours. No more secrecy. I will not be your hidden shame. Term 3. My independence is absolute. I will not be your assistant, your aide, or your victim. I will take over the legal department's archival division and report only to the board, giving me institutional protection from your family, and frankly, from the impulsive actions of your own ego. Minjun looked at her. Her demands were not for luxury or revenge. They were a fortress built around her integrity and Jun's safety, and they would shake his entire empire. He shifted Jun slightly, looking down at his son's serene face, then back to his wife, his eyes shining with a newfound respect and love that transcended even their first life together. Done, Minjun said, his voice firm, powerful, and entirely committed. Consider your terms executed. He dropped the duffel bag at her feet, then pulled her and Jun into a possessive embrace, one that sealed a terrifying new covenant, not of love, but of necessity and survival. Welcome home, Sophia. East Park residence, 10 a.m. to Minjun, drove the family to his sprawling, sterile residence on the outskirts of Seoul, a vast, intimidating complex of glass and steel. Sophia held Jun, who was now awake and babbling happily, oblivious to the fact that his arrival was about to detonate a corporate war. They were met in the grand entrance hall by a figure who perfectly embodied the threat Sophia faced, Mrs. Park, the matriarch. She was dressed impeccably, her expression a mask of patrician fury, flanked by 2 stone-faced security guards. The moment Jiho informed me you remembered, Minjun, I was relieved, Mrs. Park stated, her voice ice-cold. But bringing her into this house, holding that bastard child, that is a disgrace to the Park name. Minjun gently handed Jun to Sophia. The boy immediately buried his face in his mother's shoulder, sensing the hostility. He is my son, mother, Minjun replied, his voice calm but absolute. He had regained the CEO's chilling authority, now fused with a father's protectiveness. And she is my wife, Sophia Park. This is their home now. Mrs. Park laughed, a brittle, high sound. Home? She was your assistant, a gold digger. She manipulated you to secure a bloodline to this company. I will have the marriage annulled and the boy tested for paternity within the hour. Minjun stepped in front of Sophia, shielding her and Jun completely. That won't be necessary, he said, pulling a sheaf of legal documents from the inner pocket of his jacket. Documents Jiho had rushed to prepare on the drive back from the station. Term 1 is executed. Effective 6:30 a.m. this morning, 15% of my non-voting shares, a significant controlling portion, were transferred into a newly created, irrevocable, untraceable trust fund managed by a Swiss entity. The sole beneficiary is Jun Park, effective immediately. If anything happens to me, or if my assets are frozen, Jun is already independently secured. He leaned in, his eyes warning her. Do you want to challenge the validity of my marriage, mother? You'll risk exposing the truth of my amnesia to the courts, potentially voiding all my decisions over the last 3 years and destabilizing the entire company. Do that, and you risk losing far more than just your pride. You risk losing Park Industries. Mrs. Park's face contorted. The shares were a powerful deterrent. She had trained Minjun to be a corporate viper. Now, she was its first victim. the firestorm. MJ International Headquarters, 11 a.m. Minjun was back in his office, his tailored suit now a perfect armor. Sophia was already at a separate, secure desk in the adjacent legal wing, executing her new role as the Director of Archival Compliance, Term 3, making her accountable only to the board, a painful separation of power, but a necessary shield. Minjun convened an emergency, all hands meeting in the executive conference room, the entire board, his uncles, and rival executives. The tension was suffocating. Minjun did not waste time. He walked to the head of the table, bypassing the chair, standing tall and dominant. Good morning. This meeting is brief and urgent. My recent actions, which some of you have questioned, have been driven by personal and corporate necessity. I am correcting an omission today. He looked directly at his uncle Kwang, his most immediate rival, who looked smug, expecting a forced resignation. 3 years ago, I legally married Sophia Williams, then a low-level archivist. We have a son, Jun Park. The marriage certificate is valid. The child is mine. An eruption of gasps, furious whispers, and scraping chairs erupted around the table. Kwang shot to his feet, slamming his fist on the mahogany. This is insanity, a plot. The woman is a gold digger. We demand proof, Minjun. This violates every rule of conduct. Minjun raised his hand, silencing the room instantly with the raw power of his glare. Term 2 is now in effect. My wife has agreed to stay with me only if this truth is made public and undeniable. I have already provided legal confirmation of Jun's identity and status to the board council. Furthermore, Minjun pulled out his new phone, activating the speaker. My head of PR is now issuing the official company statement to every major media outlet in Seoul. The news is live. He played a short, clipped recording. Park Industries confirms the CEO, Minjun Park, is legally married to Sophia Park, née Williams, and is the proud father of their son, Jun Park. The room plunged into utter shock. His personal life was no longer private leverage. It was now an established, unassailable corporate fact. Sophia's new office. Minjun found Sophia in her new office, a sleek, modern space with soundproofing and secure access, a physical barrier between their personal devastation and their professional alignment. She was reviewing Term 1's final paperwork, meticulously checking the legal language of the trust fund. He leaned against the doorframe, watching her. It's done. Kwang is threatening a lawsuit, but the public support will overwhelm him. He won't touch June. Sophia finished signing a document and looked up. Her eyes were exhausted, but resolute. Good. You kept your word. That is all I need to know, Minjun. Is that all you need to know? He asked, taking a hesitant step into the room. I have just risked my entire empire for you. Do you feel nothing? I feel safe, she stated flatly, stacking the papers. I don't feel love. I can't. That man, the one I loved, is still the one who asked me why I wore his ring, why I kissed him, who ordered me to be his shadow, who tried to meet the husband he was jealous of. That man is still you, Minjun, and I am terrified of him. Minjun walked up to her, his movements slow, deliberate, respecting the spatial boundary she had created. He stopped just shy of touching her. I know the terror you feel. I feel it too. The terror of the man who looked at his son and couldn't remember his name. He reached out, his hand hovering over her cheek, a painful restraint in his posture. I may not have the luxury of your love right now, Sophia, but you are my wife. You are the mother of my child. We are fighting a war together, and I will be your shield and your sword. But when the war is over and my enemies are destroyed, I will not rest until you let me court you again. I will make you fall in love with the whole of me, trauma and all, if it takes the rest of my life. He finally brushed his thumb across her cheek, a possessive, tender caress that broke through her composure for a fleeting moment. The touch was agonizingly familiar, yet laced with the new pain of their fractured history. "We are a team now, Mrs. Park," he whispered, his eyes dark with devastating emotion, "but we are not yet a family." He turned and left her, walking out into the roaring storm of the company he had just shattered for the woman he had loved twice. Park Residence. The kitchen in the Park residence was a professional, stainless steel expanse designed for a brigade of chefs, not a small family. Sophia stood near the massive, silent island, carefully measuring ingredients for Jun's favorite blueberry pancakes. Jun sat in a high chair, humming a quiet tune. Minjun entered, freshly showered and dressed in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, but he moved with the awkwardness of a ghost. He was trying to participate, a deliberate attempt to breach the walls Sophia had erected. "I'll handle the coffee," he offered, his voice formal. Sophia did not look up. "The machine is programmed for my specific roast and volume. It's brewing now." He stopped, his hand mid-air near the pristine coffee maker. "Right, of course." He moved to the fridge, pulling out milk. He opened a cupboard looking for a cereal bowl, but the entire section was filled with antique china and crystal goblets. "The everyday essentials are in the lower gray cupboard," Sophia instructed without prompting, her tone purely functional. "I reorganized it for efficiency this morning." Minjun found the small plastic bowl she indicated, one of Jun's, and filled it with the wrong cereal. Jun wrinkled his nose. "No, Appa. Not the crunchy kind, the soft kind." Minjun felt a stab of failure. He was the most powerful man in Seoul, yet he didn't know his son's cereal preference. Sophia reached over, deftly swapped the boxes, and Minjun watched the entire exchange, the seamless connection between mother and son that he was outside of. "It's humiliating, isn't it?" Sophia murmured, finally looking at him. Her eyes were devoid of malice, only cool observation. "You can run a multinational conglomerate, but you're a complete stranger in your own home." "I'm learning," Minjun replied, his pride stinging. "I intend to master this too, Sophia." "It's not a business plan, Minjun," she said, flipping a perfect pancake. "It's life. You don't master it. You surrender to it." MJ International. Minjun met Jiho in the CEO's private lounge. Jiho looked exhausted, having spent the night putting out the familial fires Minjun's announcement had sparked. The market is volatile, but the press is eating it up. The CEO's secret family drama is driving stock prices high. "It makes you look human and protective," Jiho reported, rubbing his temples. "But Kwang is fighting dirty." "What's his move?" Minjun asked, already anticipating the blow. "He used the board meeting chaos to push through an emergency resolution for a comprehensive immediate audit of Sophia's new division, archival compliance," Jiho explained, his voice low. "It's a direct attack on Term 3. They are looking for any single technical violation or ethical oversight in her past work to discredit her and claim the marriage was predatory." Minjun's jaw tightened. "A preemptive strike. He's trying to void her standing before she can truly build her shield." "Exactly. Kwang knows Sophia is the key to Jun's legitimacy and your peace of mind. He wants to tear down her reputation and force a divorce," Jiho warned. "The auditors are coming in tomorrow. We need to hire an independent legal defense team for her, immediately, before they can touch her old records." Minjun shook his head. "No. That defeats the purpose of Term 3. She needs to prove her capability without my external influence. Kwang needs to underestimate her. We will only provide the corporate firewall. She has to win this on her own merits. Minjun, you're betting her future on her past work." "It's not a bet, Jiho. It's a test," Minjun said, his voice ruthless. "If she is as brilliant as I remember, She will not have left a single flaw for them to find. And if she is perfect, Kwang will destroy himself trying to expose her. Park residence. Minjun returned home late, the house silent. He found his way to a formal sitting room, a space he rarely used, where a magnificent dark wood grand piano sat beneath a crystal chandelier. He hadn't touched a piano since the accident. He sat down, his powerful hands resting hesitantly on the keys. He tried to remember a specific, simple tune, a lullaby he used to play for Sophia every night when they were first married in their small, anonymous apartment. He hit a dissonant chord. He tried again, focusing hard, struggling to access the memory of the melody that was locked behind a wall of trauma. His face contorted in frustration as he failed again. He slammed the lid shut. "It's G flat minor, not E." Sophia's voice came quietly from the doorway. She was wearing a simple silk robe, having put Jun to bed. Minjun whirled around. "Sophia, I didn't hear you." She stepped into the light. "I have access to all internal monitoring in this house now, as part of compliance. I heard the frustrated banging." She walked toward the piano, stopping again in the neutral zone between them. "It's a challenging key for a lullaby. It was the only song you remembered from your childhood, the one your mother used to play." Minjun felt a devastating pang of emotion. She didn't just remember the song, she remembered the reason he played it. Sophia gently lifted the lid Minjun had slammed down. She sat down next to him on the bench, not touching, but their proximity was electric. She pressed the correct sequence of keys, a soft, melancholy, perfect melody filling the vast room. Minjun stared at her profile as she played, his heart breaking for the life they lost. The music was so pure, so real. She finished the short piece. It's called The Swan's Retreat. Minjun finally moved, covering her hands with his own on the keys. This was the first time they had touched since the station, and the contact was painful, familiar, and absolutely addictive. "Thank you," he whispered, his eyes dark with devastating emotion. "I hate that I need you to remember pieces of myself." Sophia immediately pulled her hands free, breaking the contact. She stood, walking back to the doorway, her emotional wall fully reinforced. "That was a necessary maintenance of corporate knowledge, Minjun," she stated, her voice cold and professional again. "I am Director of Compliance. I am ensuring all your assets, including your memories, are functional for the fight ahead. I am not falling in love with you again." She paused, turning back to him, her eyes sharp with warning. "But here is actual information. Kwang pushed for an audit of my department, starting tomorrow. He wants to invalidate my past work, claiming incompetence or worse. I know his team, Minjun. They are vultures." She offered him a small, challenging smile, a gesture of an equal, not a subordinate. "Tell him to send his best. Every document, every receipt, every file I archived in this company for the last 3 years is perfect. He will find nothing, and when he fails, his position on the board will be significantly weakened. He is your enemy, and I, Mr. Park, am the sharpest weapon you have." With that, she turned and left him alone in the quiet, chandeliered room, the lingering melody of the Swan's Retreat, a painful echo of their broken vows. Minjun remained seated, looking at the door she had closed, a wave of profound despair washing over him, instantly followed by the terrifying, exhilarating realization. He wasn't just courting his wife, he was now fully reliant on her brilliance to protect his crown and his child. Sophia's archival compliance office, Sophia's new office, Director of Archival Compliance, was under siege. 3 auditors, sharp and predatory, sat across a large table, Kwang's personal proxies. The lead auditor, Mr. Han, was smug, anticipating the inevitable collapse of an employee hastily promoted by a compromised CEO. Sophia sat opposite them, entirely composed. She was dressed in a pristine white suit, her hair pulled back into a severe, elegant knot. She didn't look like a wife or a mother. She looked like a queen defending her territory. "We appreciate your cooperation, Director Park," Mr. Han said, his smile thin. "We are focusing on the period immediately preceding your promotion. Specifically, the 3 years where you handled critical documentation for the chairman's office, a sensitive period, wouldn't you agree?" "Every period of my tenure was critical, Mr. Han," Sophia replied, her voice cool and level. "I look forward to demonstrating the zero defect rate of my archival compliance system. Which file structure would you like to begin with?" Mr. Han signaled, and his team began pulling up data, looking for the chaos they expected to find. A missed receipt, an unsorted contract, anything that proved her incompetence and compromised her marriage. Minjun had moved his operations into the executive lounge, a small, glass-walled space directly overlooking Sophia's office floor. He hadn't interfered, honoring Term 3, but he watched every move. Jiho was with him, pacing nervously. "This is agonizing, Minjun," Jiho whispered, watching the intense standoff. "Kwang is escalating. If they find a single misplaced comma on a multi-billion-dollar contract, he'll use it to claim her promotion was a bribe and the marriage invalid." "They won't find anything," Minjun said, his voice quiet, his eyes never leaving Sophia. He remembered the fierce, almost painful devotion she applied to her work, even as a junior aide. Her compliance was not a job. It was a matter of spiritual principle. A memory flashed. He'd once found her working past midnight, cross-referencing a stack of foreign currency receipts. He had tried to pull her away, but she had swatted his hand and muttered, "Every detail matters, Minjun. The chaos you ignore is the weakness your enemy exploits." Minjun felt a tremor of pure, powerful pride. He had seen her strength in love. Now he saw it in battle. The audit continued for hours, stretching into the afternoon. The auditors grew visibly frustrated, their confident demeanor cracking. Every document was where it should be, labeled, backed up, and cross-referenced with maniacal precision. Finally, Mr. Han zeroed in on a high-stakes file from 48 months ago, a massive, complex acquisition deal known as Project Kronos, initiated just before Minjun's accident. "Ah," Han smiled, pointing to the screen. "Here we are. Exhibit 17D, a discrepancy. The final contract copy's date code on the server log shows 12:03:47 p.m., but the physical signed copy you archived is stamped 12:04:01 p.m., a full 14-second lag. This suggests a post-signature alteration or a filing error. It was a microscopic flaw, but in the hostile world of Chibols, a 14-second lag on a critical final document could be spun as fraudulent backdating. Kwang had found his crack. Minjun felt his chest constrict. He wanted to burst into the room, but he held himself back, trusting the viper he had loved. Sophia didn't blink. She smiled, a small, chilling smile of absolute superiority. "Mr. Han, please cross-reference that server log with the building's maintenance report from that specific date and time." Han looked confused but obeyed, typing the request. A separate window popped up, showing an internal maintenance record. Sophia leaned forward, her eyes catching the light. "You will notice that at precisely 12:03:50 p.m., 3 seconds after your server log entry, the central HVAC system experienced a pressure spike, causing a localized power flicker. The surge duration was 1.4 seconds. That flicker caused the server to momentarily suspend timestamping of the ongoing upload." She pointed to her own data. "Now, look at the archival log for the physical file. The timestamp is created by the official notary scanner, which operates on an independent emergency generator." She stood up and walked to the wall, pulling down a small framed document. Not a contract, but a certification. The 14-second difference is not an error, Mr. Han. It is the exact measure of the time it took for the building's main power grid to stabilize and allow the server to complete the upload after the initial power spike. My system recorded the physical filing precisely, independent of the internal corporate server failure. Had I relied solely on the server, the date of filing would be erroneous. My archival method protected this company from a potential legal dispute based on a technicality. She placed the framed document, a technical certification of the scanner's independent power source, on the table. In short, Mr. Han, you did not find a flaw in my work. You found proof that I am the only reason Project Kronos is still legally sound. Mr. Han's face was ashen. His superior, Kwang, hadn't told him about the power surge. He had only highlighted the time discrepancy. Sophia had anticipated not only the error, but the reason for the error, and she had archived the defense alongside the document. The auditors packed up their equipment in humiliated silence. Mr. Han formally closed the audit and signed the compliance report. 0 issues found. As the door clicked shut behind the defeated team, Sophia leaned back in her chair, a single deep breath escaping her lips. The adrenaline was leaving her, and for the first time she looked utterly spent. Minjun, unable to contain himself any longer, strode across the floor and entered her office, closing the door behind him. "You are incredible," he breathed, walking around the desk. "You are a genius, Sophia. You defeated them with 14 seconds of stability data." He reached out, intending to grip her shoulders in pride and relief, but Sophia flinched, pulling back slightly. The professional distance was instantly reinstated. "It was my job, Mr. Park," she said, her voice dropping the formal, battle-ready tone. "And now the audit is over, and my shield is secure. You owe me a substantial favor for neutralizing your uncle." Minjun stopped, his hand dropping to his side. He wasn't allowed to be her husband yet. He was still her protector and her debtor. Later, Minjun found Sophia standing alone by the doors, looking out at the vast, immaculate gardens. He walked up behind her, not touching, but close enough for her to feel his warmth. "I loved you," Minjun said, his voice husky. Sophia turned, her eyes red from crying, but free of anger. "I hate you, Minjun," she whispered, her voice raw. "I hate how you tormented me. I hate that you remembered the only good part of my life, the part you destroyed. It makes me feel—" He took a step closer, closing the final, agonizing gap between them. "I need you to feel hopeful, Sophia. I need you to feel alive. And I need you to remember that the man who loved you was flawed long before the accident. He just had the good sense to hide it with a kind heart." He reached up, gently wiping the tears from her cheek with his thumb. The touch was achingly tender, devastatingly intimate. "The amnesia stole 3 years of our happiness. But the love that built that happiness, that was mine. It was real, and it is still here." Sophia's resolve finally shattered. She didn't lean into him, but she didn't pull away. The professional shield of Term 3 failed, allowing the wife and lover to surface. "What if it happens again?" she choked out. "What if you leave me again?" Minjun's voice was a vow, whispered with the gravity of a man who had faced his own annihilation. "Then I will leave instructions for my own destruction. I would rather be nothing than be the man who hurt you again." He closed the remaining distance, his lips brushing hers in a moment of desperate, agonizing connection that was more about possession and pain than true romance. The kiss was a treaty signed in longing and fear. The war was still on, but the commander had just kissed the enemy general. The morning after. Park residence, 8 a.m. The morning after felt fragile, suspended between the chaos of their past and the terror of their future. Minjun and Sophia were in the kitchen, their formal hostility replaced by a tense, aching domesticity. Minjun was struggling to make scrambled eggs. a task he found harder than any hostile takeover. Sophia, meanwhile, was packing June's lunchbox for his small daycare, her movements deliberate and precise. "You burned the eggs," Sophia observed, looking at the blackened pan. "Again." Minjun swore quietly in Korean, turning off the heat. "I can't multitask with a human variable. My efficiency drops below 50% when the output is food." Sophia offered a rare, small smile, not of happiness, but of gentle irony. "That's what you hired me for, Minjun, to manage your chaos." He walked over to her, his hand reaching for the curve of her shoulder, a familiar, possessive gesture from their first life. This time, she didn't flinch away. She let him touch her, savoring the weight of his hand. "Last night," he began, his voice dropping to a low, intimate rumble. "That kiss was not a treaty, Sophia. It was a promise. The war against the outside ends today, and the battle for your heart begins." He leaned in, his eyes dark with devastating intent, but before he could close the distance, his phone vibrated, violently shattering the intimacy. It was Jiho. Minjun answered the call, his face instantly hardening into the mask of the CEO. Jiho's voice was frantic. "Minjun, it's a bloodbath. Kwang and your mother just executed a simultaneous two-front attack. First, they used a minority proxy vote to dissolve the board of directors, accusing you of gross financial instability due to the emergency stock transfers to June's trust. You have no board support left. Second," Minjun's voice was dangerously calm, "they leaked the original police file from your accident, the one that lists the extent of your amnesia and head trauma, to the Financial Oversight Commission. They are petitioning for a temporary court injunction, claiming you are mentally unfit to lead and manage the company. They've frozen your personal assets." Minjun looked at Sophia, who had stopped packing and was watching him, her face mirroring his shock. "They didn't just freeze my assets, Jiho. They froze June's trust." "No," Jiho corrected, his voice tight. "They can't touch the Swiss trust, but they have filed a motion to immediately investigate the beneficiary, Jun Park, claiming he is an undocumented minor and a high-risk flight threat, demanding that he be placed under the temporary custody of the matriarch until the CEO's mental fitness is confirmed." The final, brutal truth hit Minjun. Kwang and Mrs. Park weren't after the company. They were after the child, knowing that losing Jun would destroy Minjun completely. Minjun threw his half-eaten breakfast against the wall. "They won't touch him. They can't touch him." "They can and they will," Sophia said, her voice sharp and practical, overriding his panic. "If they have a court order, they will execute it. Jun is at the daycare. We need to move now. We have maybe 30 minutes. She rushed to the secure safe Minjun had installed. She pulled out the legal documents she had meticulously prepared: the original marriage license, June's certified birth certificate, and the paperwork proving the Swiss trust's independence from Korean corporate law. "My job wasn't just archiving, Minjun," she said, her eyes flashing with defiance. "My job was preemptive defense. I planned for this disaster 3 years ago." "We need to get Jun," Minjun stated, grabbing his keys. "No, you don't," Sophia countered, blocking the doorway. "You have a court order pending against you. If you pick him up, that's kidnapping in the eyes of the law, and they will use it to destroy your reputation and solidify your mental instability claim. You go to the courthouse and clear your name. I will use my authority as director of compliance to retrieve Jun legally." Minjun hesitated, his protective instinct screaming at him to find his son. But Sophia's logic was flawless. He was a corporate target. She was a legal shield. He grabbed her arms, pulling her close, his eyes blazing with a mixture of terror and desperate love. "If anything happens to him, Sophia—" "Nothing will happen," she vowed, her voice steady. "You win your war in the courtroom. I will win mine on the field. Go." Now. He kissed her, a fast, ferocious, desperate contact that acknowledged the terrifying risk they were taking. Then, Minjun turned and ran toward the corporate battlefield. Sophia arrived at June's small, quiet daycare center in a sleek black company car. 2 security guards, not Kwang's, but his mother's, were already standing by the gate, looking official and dangerous. Director Park, one guard stepped forward. We have orders from Mrs. Park to take temporary custody of June Park. We have the court authorization. Sophia didn't show fear. She held up her badge and a stack of crisp legal documents. You have a temporary custody order based on a court motion to investigate the child's safety, which is predicated on the CEO's supposed mental instability, she stated, her voice projecting cold, unassailable authority. However, I have here a counterfiling, submitted exactly 10 minutes ago to the Court of Record, stating that the child is currently under the care of his legal, competent parent, Sophia Park, Director of Archival Compliance. She pointed to the paperwork, her finger landing on a specific clause. Furthermore, I have included a notarized statement from the Swiss Trust detailing the emergency financial protection put in place 3 days ago, which is legally protected from Korean corporate litigation. Jun Park is secured. His life is stable. Your motion is void, and any attempt to forcibly remove him constitutes kidnapping and will be treated as an act of corporate espionage, punishable by the highest extent of the law. You are trespassing on private property. Leave now. The guards looked at the massive legal stack, then at the formidable, calm woman who had just delivered a fatal legal blow. They hesitated, defeated by her perfection. They turned and retreated. Sophia walked into the daycare and emerged moments later, holding June's hand. He was confused but smiling. She looked down at her son, then up at the darkening sky over Seoul, knowing the battle was not over. Minjun was fighting the main war, trusting her entirely with the most precious piece of his life. She called Minjun, who was pulling up to the courthouse steps. I have him. He's safe. Minjun's voice, though weary, contained a thread of undeniable victory. And I have the evidence. Your archival records were flawless, Sophia. They confirm every transaction. They confirm I am competent. They confirm we are real. Kwang's case just collapsed. Meet me at Jiho's safe house, Sophia commanded, the wife and partner now taking full control. We finish this together. The safe house was a sleek, minimalist apartment overlooking the Han River, usually reserved for high-stakes corporate negotiations. Tonight, it was a sanctuary. Jun was asleep in a spare bedroom, the exhausted victor of a custody battle he knew nothing about. Sophia sat on a pristine white sofa, holding a cup of lukewarm tea, the adrenaline having completely drained away. The door opened, and Minjun entered. He was wearing the same suit he'd thrown on that morning, now crumpled, his hair falling into his eyes, but his expression was utterly victorious. They withdrew the motion, Minjun announced, sinking onto the sofa opposite her. The evidence from your archives was irrefutable. I was declared fully fit, and the emergency trust transfer was validated. Kwang and Mother are facing a criminal probe for corporate destabilization and the attempted kidnapping of a minor. Sophia merely nodded. Expected. When your enemy overreaches, they leave themselves exposed. Minjun looked at her, truly seeing her. Not the assistant, not the wife he forgot, but the brilliant strategist who had saved his life, his son, and his company, all while hating him. You won it, Sophia, he said, his voice husky. You were the shield and the sword. You saved us. Sophia set down her cup. The final battle was not fought in a courtroom. It was fought right here, in this silent room. The war is over, Minjun. Now we face the treaty's execution, she stated, her tone professional, but her eyes held deep vulnerability. I stood by you because of my vows, and June, but I have to know, Are you still fighting as the man who loved me, or are you just fighting to keep the life I secured for you? Minjun pushed himself off the sofa and walked to the window, staring out at the river, letting the cold glass cool his forehead. The amnesia was a physical injury, he admitted, his voice low. But the man I became, the cruel CEO who used people, who demanded perfection and offered nothing in return. That was always a part of me, Sophia. It's the worst part of the Park legacy. The accident didn't create him. It just removed the only person who kept him in check. He turned back, his face raw with truth. I am asking you to come back to a man who is whole, but also a man who is dangerous. I will never forget again, but I need you to be my conscience. I need you to be my safe harbor. I need you to be the constant reminder of who I am supposed to be. He walked toward her, kneeling down on the carpet at her feet. A CEO surrendering his power to his archivist. I don't just love the woman I married, Sophia. I love the woman who terrified me, who challenged me, who risked her life for a man who didn't remember her name. I love you, fully and completely. If you tell me to leave, I will transfer control to Jiho and disappear forever. Because without you, my life is meaningless, and I will only hurt people. Sophia looked down at the most powerful man in the country, kneeling, broken, and utterly honest. She saw the true Minjun, the loving husband, but also the ruthless CEO, finally acknowledging that his strength came from her. She reached out and traced the familiar scar on his left wrist, the scar that led him back to her. The first time, you gave me a diamond that was too big and vows that were too fragile, she said, tears finally welling up. But this time, they were tears of release. We built our life on a secret, and it shattered. She pulled off the simple gold wedding band she had worn throughout the entire crisis and placed it firmly in his palm. I won't wear a ring that belongs to a ghost. I won't return to a life built on a lie. Minjun looked at the ring in his hand, then back at her. He understood. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, the one he had bought when he first became obsessed with finding the husband. He had intended to use it to buy Sophia's loyalty. He opened it. Inside was a simple, elegant silver band, engraved with a single Korean phrase, I see you. He held it out, not as an order, but as a request. I see you, Sophia Park. I see the mother, the archivist, the genius, and the woman who saved my life twice. This time, we don't need a secret. We just need the truth. He took her hand, sliding the new ring onto her finger. I promise you chaos. I promise you corporate enemies, but I promise you honesty. Will you make a new vow with me? Not to the church, but to our life? Sophia looked at the silver ring, then at his eyes, the terror finally yielding to love. Yes, Minjun, she whispered, her voice heavy with the gravity of their shared, painful history. I vow to manage your chaos, and I vow to never stop seeing you. Minjun rose, wrapping his arms around her, pulling her into a kiss that sealed their new, complicated, and hard-won future. A kiss of equals, 1 year later. The park residence was no longer a cage. It was a home. Jun, now 4, was in the massive kitchen, wearing a chef's hat and helping Minjun measure flour for pancakes. Minjun had only burned 2 batches this week. Sophia entered, dressed in a sharp executive suit. She held a newspaper, smiling. The headline read, Director Parks Compliance Division leads park industries to record stability amidst global market volatility. Minjun wiped flour on his face and grinned. You broke another record, Director Park. You're making me look like a figurehead. You are, Sophia teased, kissing his cheek. A familiar, possessive gesture. But you're a handsome one. She looked down at the new silver ring on her finger. It wasn't about diamonds or secrecy. It was about the simple, undeniable fact that they belonged together. a family forged in fire. "We have a board meeting at 9, CEO," she said. "But first, I think the three of us need to finish these disastrous pancakes." Minjun scooped up Jun, placing the boy on his shoulders, the easy, fatherly gesture now second nature. He looked at Sophia, his eyes filled with gratitude for the life she fought to return to him. "Lead the way, wife." The end.